So this is wild. Florida has passed a bill to release all of the Epstein grand jury documents from 2006. And Ron DeSantis announced he will be signing this into law, and they will immediately release all of these Epstein documents from the original charges against him. It was a bill put forward by a Democrat, I believe, and unanimously approved. So this is going to be massive. We definitely have to lead with talking about this, but we do have a lot of other news. Donald Trump's SEC got SEC approval for the DWAC merger. This means Trump is going to become $4 billion richer. Truth Social will be valued at about $10 billion. This is massive. So all the haters going to hate, but it doesn't matter because Trump he's tripling his net worth right now. They can do everything they want to him. It seems like a lot of the moves they're making against him not only advance their crackpot ideology, but also tie up Trump's funds in an election year where he needs them. And that seems to be the big issue. Now, Trump has mentioned when Engoron, the judge in his case, said $354 million plus $100 million in interest, it looks as though he looked at Trump's bank account and said, I want all of your money. Because that's basically what the ruling is. All of Trump's available cash on hand is what they're fining him for, which is an arbitrary number that comes from nowhere. So it seems like that's what they're trying to do. With this DWAC deal, Trump's going to be doing pretty all right. But we'll see. And then we got big news, 7.3 million illegal immigrants entering the country and a lot of stuff around that we're going to get into. Before we get started, my friends, follow at Timcast Songs on YouTube. If you search for Timcast Music or at Timcast Songs, you can come to the channel and check out the new trailer for Eyes of Advice, which is dropping on Friday. We're really excited for this. Phil Labonte, we were talking about it earlier, had some very kind words about the efforts in the video. It is one of the most labor-intensive videos we've done. For those that are watching, it was like 4 months of post-production, CGI, very, very crazy. It is a meaningful song, and there is certainly a message in it, which is plainly obvious to those if you watch it. So I strongly recommend you subscribe to at Timcast Songs, or also Timcast. It's the same channel, but the tag now, because YouTube added tags, is at Timcast Songs. So confusing. And subscribe to the channel. Maybe we'll crack 100K, and then we have that song coming out on Friday, and we're working on a new one. Phil was helping us with this. We're really, really excited. Also, head over to castbrew.com. Buy coffee from us. We're really excited about the event on March 5th. We're really excited about the ongoing events. We have begun the initial planning stages of the election night live event. You know what I realized? I want y'all to be able to come to our show on election day, which will probably be a full day of crazy coverage. Who knows where we're going to be in this country at that point? But Cast Brew Coffee will be open by then, the physical location in Martinsburg, West Virginia. And this is effectively our Olympics. Every 4 years, this is, for news and commentary and politics, this is the big day for everybody. And I know you guys are really interested. So the Cast Brew Coffee location could use your support. When you buy Cast Brew Coffee, you're basically helping us run this mission, which supports our ability to have this club and live events. We're hoping to do them once a month. Martinsburg, West Virginia, look it up on a map. If you're on the East Coast, it's not too hard to get to, so we're really excited. But don't forget, if you want to go to these events, you got to be a member by going to timcast.com. You got to click Join Us, become a member, so that you can join our Discord server. Talk with like-minded individuals. There's a ton of pre-shows and after-shows and other daily content produced by those in the Discord server. And you can also submit questions as a member so that you can talk to us and our guests during our uncensored members-only shows. Now, we typically have these Monday through Thursday at 10 p.m. We will not be having one tonight. Our guest is a superstar with a busy schedule, but we're very, very grateful that he's here. Kirk Cameron is joining us tonight. Kirk, how you doing?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. A superstar. I was getting excited. I was going to see who's
coming in. It's you.
Who's coming in? Not Mike Seaver.
Yeah.
Bro, you're not old enough to even know who Mike Seaver is.
Yes, I do.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I was probably too young to remember.
You have a baby face. That's why you have the beard.
I was born
You're older than I thought.
Well, I was born in 86.
All right.
So
growing pains started when, 84. I was like 14.
Yeah, I was not alive. Maybe I was a banana or something. And my dad and my mom ate the banana, and then the rest is magic, I guess. But yeah, of course, growing pains, man. And so, but we're really glad you're here, and we know that you're working on a new show with Brave Books.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, I've been writing books with Brave Books for the last year or so, and mixing it up with drag queens and the American Library Association, and even Scholastic Books, and trying to get parents and grandparents fired up about taking back the leadership role in their kids' education. I think education is critically important, and as a father and soon-to-be grandfather, I want to lean in and do my part to do everything that we can to save this culture for our kids.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why we're really excited to have you, and we wanted to have you for a while, because one big issue in the culture war, of course, is the drag story hours. I'm talking about the event we're doing in Martinsburg at our coffee shop. March 5th. It's going to be fun. Once we officially open the shop, the plan I have for Saturday mornings is something I call Saturday morning cartoons, where we want to open up early, maybe 7 a.m. We want to have catered breakfast. Parents can come with their kids. And on the TVs will be family-approved educational kids content, cartoons. The kids can hang out socially, be social, interact. The parents can share ideas. And I feel like this is how we build community back in our areas. It's how we can help. I'm a big fan of what the Daily Wire is doing with Bent Key and this kids content. And so I think not only are we going to help build up that kind of content and create a culture or strengthen the culture of actual good family-friendly content, but when the parents get together and start talking, it creates organization where they can actually affect change. And when bad things start happening in the community, we, of course, can then have an organized group of parents and leaders who can push back. But I bring this up because even in Martinsburg, West Virginia, you've got all ages drag shows they're trying to do. During Pride, next to our building, they had a drag show in the street and they brought children up on stage. And my attitude the whole time is like, if you're 18 and up and you want to have a private event, go have your private event. It's a free country. But the fact that they keep trying to pull kids into it is where I'm like, you're crossing the line. So the way we win this is we push back culturally, but we have to build. It's not just about being angry and complaining on the internet. It's about actually doing something. So that's why we're really excited, because you've basically been doing regular story time and they've been really angry about you reading, I guess, just like wholesome books to kids. It's crazy.
That's right. The first book that I wrote was called As You Grow, and it's a story of a little acorn that grows up into a big oak tree and teaches kids how to grow the sweet fruit of love, joy, kindness, gentleness, self-control during the different difficult seasons of their life. It was a great book. I wanted to read it at a public library, and I was denied by over 50 woke libraries that had previously held drag queen story hours at those libraries. I'm sorry. I suppose I could have put on some high heels and fishnet stockings, but I never look good in a skirt. I just went as myself, and they said no. And then I told some friends at the news and was able to remind them publicly that this is the United States of America, viewpoint discrimination, and theirs was religious viewpoint discrimination, just because I'm a Christian, and there was a Bible verse or two in the book, is not grounds to tell me that I can't come to a public library when people want me there and have invited me there. So I told them I'd see them in court if they didn't change course. They did change course. We showed up at the Indianapolis Public Library and had 3,000 parents and grandparents welcoming us, so much that it actually violated fire codes. And they were telling people to leave the floors, go down to other floors. And the coolest part was this. There were people that were, the room that they put us in was maybe room for 150 people to gather to read this little kid's book. There was another 2,500 people outside, down the escalator, out the door, and down the street, waiting to get in. Wow. They would never make it in the small window of time that they gave us. So what did all these parents and grandparents do who had schlepped their kids out there? They didn't start rioting. They didn't break windows. They weren't flipping cars over. They weren't lighting stuff on fire. The moms just sat down between the aisles of books in the libraries. They opened up their book bags and they just started reading to their kids and having story hours there, and they were singing songs. It like turned into like a God Bless America fest, reading songs of wholesome virtue to the kids in the libraries, and everybody had a great time, even though technically they didn't get to see what they came for, but they were part of something that they knew was important, and they were so grateful.
This is amazing, and it is a tremendous victory culturally. So we'll get into all that more later in the show. We talk about the show you're doing in the book, so this is going to be fun, man. Thanks for hanging out. We got Hannah Claire hanging out.
Hey, I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm so excited you're here. I love hearing about your fight to take back the public library. I grew up with a library in my town that I absolutely loved, and it was way before the wokeism crept in. But I'm a writer for scnr.com. You should follow all of our work at Timcast News on Instagram and Twitter. Ian's here.
What's up, dudes? Ian Crossland. Were you always a wholesome guy, or did you evolve into that post-Hollywood?
Yeah, I've done some evolving for sure. And as far as me being a wholesome guy, I'm also an actor. I could be faking this whole thing. I could just be a real jerk,
It's a
and you don't
performance
even know
piece
it.
for the last 40 years.
We had to get a bowl of brown M&Ms for him before he got here.
That's right. I'm a bit of a diva. That's right. Actually, I did request my own biltong.
Yeah. Take that with you.
We were actually excited when he saw we had biltong. We were like, yes, we'll get you some for sure.
Yeah,
We're
this,
so
is,
excited.
this is very high quality biltong too.
Top notch.
This isn't
Chewy
your
out
run of the
there.
mill dried beef.
Kind of melts in your mouth. Shout out to Serge for making that happen.
No, shout out Vifia. Thank you, man. We appreciate it. And I'm Serge.com. I might as well intro myself. I'm glad you like it. I'm glad you do. It's good stuff.
Really,
eh?
it's really good.
Yeah,
and
it is.
It's not overly seasoned.
Oh,
I
of
like
course
it.
not.
So
It's
I feel like I'd eat the whole bag.
Hey, you hear that? It's good stuff, man. Anyways,
Let's jump into the news. This is huge from Florida's Voice. Florida Senate passes bill to set release of Epstein grand jury documents. The Florida Senate gave final approval to a bill that would permit the release of documents related to convicted sex offender and now deceased Jeffrey Epstein as part of a 2006 Florida grand jury investigation. The bill expands the rules for allowing the release of evidence and or testimony from a grand jury. Senator Tina Polsky, Democrat from Boca Raton, filed the legislation. It passed the floor unanimously 37-0. At the time, Epstein escaped with far less severe punishment relating to allegations regarding his solicitation of minors for sexual activity. The Florida House of Representatives passed the bill last week unanimously. The House version was filed by Rep. Peggy Gossett-Seidman, a Republican from Highland Beach. Gossett-Seidman had said the victims of Epstein deserve to know more about testimony against Epstein in the Florida case. The legislation notably applies when the subject of a grand jury investigated is deceased. Epstein passed in 2019. It also applies when the grand jury investigation was related to criminal or sexual activity between the subject and a minor at the time of the activity. However, it notes the court can still issue redactions and other restrictions on releasing testimony. Now, aside from this, Ron DeSantis has tweeted out, all files related to Jeffrey Epstein's criminal activity should be made public. When the federal government continues to stonewall accountability, I'm glad the legislature has taken action to release the grand jury material from the Florida state case. I will sign the bill into law. It has been 18 years since this information was collected. When it was, they had real evidence that Epstein was doing really, really horrible things, and likely with very powerful people. They covered it up. I can't believe it took until 2019 to get a conviction, despite the fact that people had been talking about this for some time. 10 years ago, you were called a conspiracy theorist. Today, it is historical record and fact. I wonder how many powerful elites in the United States and around the world started sweating the moment this story, this news broke. 6 p.m. DeSantis says, 6 p.m. today, DeSantis says, I'm signing this into law. There's got to be a couple of rich people who are wiping their brows with their handkerchief right now.
I mean, let's hope so, right? We'd love to see things like this come to fruition because we want accountability. I think that's what the biggest shift in the Jeffrey Epstein narrative is that people feel as though they can not only say out loud, he did these things and it was bad and had a terrible impact on people, but also there are other people who are being kept out of the narrative and whose names are being shielded because of this, and that's not okay. I think before there was a time where it sort of felt like, well, there's nothing we can do about it, and I like the return to demanding accountability.
This is you asked me this as we're getting the story ready. You're like, why? How come we hear these things and like nothing happens?
Right.
And it's a good question. But my response was, and I'm like, we should have just done the show. I'm like, it was a great question.
The tapes on January 6th come out, or this is going to be released and everyone's going to hear the truth. They're going to get all this new information, and then nothing happens. Or is something happening?
And so it's almost as, I wish we recorded it, because I said, well, something is happening. But I think because of the internet, everybody expects everything to happen instantly. Like the news breaks and then you're like, okay, something should happen. You know, when the founding fathers signed the Declaration of Independence, it was a year and a month after the war had already started. So Lexington and Concord is 1775. A year later, they're like, okay, I think we'll declare independence now after a year of fighting. It took 3 months for that declaration to make it to the crown. Then they get it. Then they have to schedule a meeting, parliament, figure out what's going on. I mean, it's like years for just this one concept to happen. We're seeing all the stuff related to Epstein now. What I think is going to happen is more and more people cannot deny the reality of this. So it shatters the establishment narrative. Every time we get news, these documents are going to come out. It's going to implicate somebody. It's going to be terrifying and damning for these nasty people. They're going to be shaking in their boots, and we're better off for it. you're going to have a liberal aunt or uncle or grandfather or whatever, relative, neighbor. And when this stuff comes out and becomes undeniable, as it's already been doing, they won't be able to reject your ideas when you say, listen, look, 10 years ago, you come out and you're talking to your neighbor and you say, this Epstein guy's doing this stuff. And they go, oh, you're nuts.
Yeah.
Now they're like, well, of course. So that's the shift. Where does this go? You will eventually end up with politicians, as we are seeing now. Why didn't Florida release these documents in 2012? No one cared. The politicians thought, what do I gain from doing it? Some lobbyist comes in and says, I represent a very powerful individual who does not want those documents released. And they go, okay, fine. Now, you've got internet fundraising. You've got people like Matt Gaetz and AOC, for as much as we'd criticize her, but they're not beholden to powerful lobbyists anymore. They're beholden to internet masses and their communities who will fund their campaigns with smaller donations. They can say F you to the big shots. So when that lobbyist comes in and says, I represent a guy who doesn't want these documents released, they go, oh, that sucks for you, I guess. Now that people are demanding it and funding it, they're and funding the change and funding the politicians who are going to make this change happen. The more we get information, the more we can convert regular people, get them on our side. You will start seeing politicians make bigger and bigger moves. So this story is it happening. The documents come out in 2018, 2019. Epstein gets locked up. He dies. Everyone says, what's going on? We want to know what happened. Now, finally, Florida saying we're going to release the documents from 2006.
I think it's good. I think the transparency in general is good. Obviously, the secrecy can be good too. If you're, weapons secrecy or whatever, but like you want to protect your national security. But I am also, we were talking before the show about the age of obfuscation. We're kind of like with AI is now kind of twisting and turning reality. So I'm not like, yay, we won thing. I don't know what's going to happen, because even if the data comes out and then people are like, no, you didn't read that, you thought you read that, but you actually read this, and they show you a different. I don't know.
When AI starts manipulating.
Oh my gosh!
But that's kind of where we got to figure that stuff out. That's for sure. But I think these kind of things happening, we can whittle it down to one simple point. It breaks the establishment narrative.
Yeah, and also like the uniparty, the federal uniparty that probably has people involved with Epstein more than like state governments, are kind of beholden to the states. It's not the other way around. The states have a lot of power. DeSantis is exercising that power. I have a lot of respect for him for doing that.
It is interesting because from what I read, they introduced an effort to release these documents last year and it failed. And so this is the second attempt, which again tells that even 12 months later, there's a shift in culture.
Yep. We winning.
What I get nervous about is, do you remember what was the list that came out? That everyone's like, oh, they're releasing Epstein's list, but it wasn't. It was just people who were being called to testify. And then they release these documents and some are redacted and they're out of order and you don't really know.
Not even testify. It was just names that were brought up in the case.
That just appeared at any point, right? So that was sort of weird misinformation. I have this fear that while this is a victory and I don't want to take away from that, you could theoretically roll out these documents in a way that presents information in a biased presentation. I guess I wonder about what the effect will be long term. This is a victory no matter what.
I really like what you guys are saying. And Tim, you're reminding me the importance of playing the long game. You're just talking about how much we want instant gratification. We see something like this, or we see the January 6th tapes, or we see something else, and we say, boom, we want justice to be served right now. But what I see the Marxists have done, the leftists have done, the progressives have done is they're really playing a long game, and they say, hey, let's get a hold of public education and let's just work this for a really, really long time. And you might have think, well, it's not working. No, it's working very, very well. It's establishing the crack in the dam that ultimately will bust the whole thing open. But you've got to be willing to play the long game. And I think often conservatives aren't doing that, but I see the other side doing that very well.
I think people should understand. When I start a game of chess with, say, Ian here, I want to knock his king over right when the game starts, but you can't. Because he's got the same pieces you do, which means you need to figure out how to navigate that system to overcome his defenses and then checkmate his king. What we are seeing now is, sure, the January 6 tapes come out, more Epstein information comes out. What this is, in Florida, we moved our bishop across the board and we're securing, we're reinforcing one of our pieces, maybe putting a threat to one of their pieces on the board. We've not yet checkmated the opponent, but this is a part of the process where we are lining up the board for a victory.
That's so true, good. Kirk, about instant gratification. I think the society is kind of evolved or devolved. We've revolved into this sense of instant gratification with 30-second clips and likes and all that. How many likes did I get? How many likes did I get? And like the long game is so key. The communist, as Yuri Bezmenov talked a lot about, takes 20 years to infiltrate a country. With the KGB, they'd be like, this is a Russian tactic, a Soviet tactic. As you get in there early, it takes you 10, 20 years. The Chinese, as far as I can tell, they're still fighting the opium wars from the 1890s. Like now they're feeding fentanyl through Mexico because what happened was the British colonized off the east coast of China and just poured opium into China in the late 1800s and just toxified their civilianry and controlled their nation through addiction. And now they're still, it's like the memory is not lost.
I also wonder how much of it has to do with the fact that so much of the American population gets their sense of how law enforcement and the justice system works through like Law and Order SVU. So you have this like neat little thing that ties up in 40 minutes, 30 minutes. And it seems like even though they'll put at the bottom, like these are months apart, your brain is conditioned to think, but it happens back to back to back to back. So
and CSI is the worst. I can't tell you. I mean, anybody who knows a cop or has talked to a cop about it, they go, oh, geez. I was talking to a cop out in West Virginia, and he was like, you will not believe it. We'll get like, someone will call in and say, someone broke into my garage and stole my, leaf blower or something. And we'll show up, we'll take notes, and we'll say, thank you for your information. And they immediately respond with, well, aren't you going to dust for prints? It's like, it's a $70 leaf blower. Yeah. What do you think we're doing over here?
Meanwhile, NCIS is like, there's the body. Okay, we've gotten the DNA back 5 seconds later. And every other, like anyone who's into true crime or police officers, like that would take months if we had the funding for it.
Yep. If we had the funding for it. Like, we could do it maybe in a month, but no one's going to spend the money on this.
Meanwhile, they have it by lunch. I mean, it's a fictional world. And again, that is a lot of people's exposure to how any sort of legal proceeding works.
It's crazy that it's been almost 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
The long game, I guess, is where we're at. Because I have been banging my head against the proverbial wall, trying to fix the world in like a talk show, in like a 2-hour podcast. And like, dude, there's that saying that you plant trees that you'll never sit under the shade of. You inspired Leonardo. We were talking before the show, like Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt got their start on your TV show in the 80s.
Right.
And without even knowing it, you were like mentoring those guys and showing them what a young actor could become. And now, like, I guess that's where it's at, is like teaching the children, is helping the kids.
Brad Pitt's watching around now being like, Kirk was great.
This, I think, I don't know who's listening to this program right now, but for the moms and dads out there who feel like, what can I do? I don't have a podcast. I don't have a television show. I don't have a bunch of influencers on this platform. But you know what? Playing the long game as a mom, as a dad, as a grandparent, I think is one of the most powerful things we can possibly do. I mean, what does everybody want to do? They want to get to the children. They want to get to the children through TikTok, Instagram, through Snapchat, through public schools, through whatever, because whoever has the time to tell the stories and set the values in the hearts and minds of children gets to control the future. Mm-hmm. Isn't that true?
But your poor kids, Kirk, your poor kids having to look at the Tiger Beat magazines of you and like seeing all the celebrities.
We should pull those up, by the way. Those are hot.
We'll pull it up. No, but what I think is really, really important is we've talked on this show about the importance of having families, and the here's what I love. Anybody who's ever played one of these strategy games like StarCraft or Warcraft or Command and Conquer, you just mass produce the lowest level fighter unit. So you ever see one of these video games where it's like you build a little base and then you'll like collect resources and then train soldiers? Instead of building the most intricate weapons and making your army have nukes, you just make millions of little soldiers. You send them all over to your enemy's base and they just through just volume wipe them out. What is it called? Zerging?
Yeah. That's Zerging? Actually based on the Zerg from StarCraft.
Right, you just mass produce the Zerg and send them over. It's the cheapest, smallest unit. When it comes to the culture war, there's a really, really simple way to win. And it's just to mass make humans. Just keep having babies.
You'll outnumber them eventually.
And the crazy thing is, this is actually what many other groups have said. Mm-hmm. The difference now is we're looking at the left. They're not having kids. They're aborting their kids. They're sterilizing their kids. But a lot of people have said, yes, Tim, but even if we do have kids, they're indoctrinating them. It's like, uh-huh. And Kirk Cameron is going to libraries and reading them books and making books and countering that. So if you have someone producing culture, and it's Brave Books, it's many others, and you're having more kids, you've won.
Yeah.
It just takes time.
I think Kirk is totally right. I think the parents are really on the ground level of this culture war battle because they are with their children. There's this line from the sociologist Neil Postman that children are a message to a future that you'll never be in. And it's like, it reminds me of the game of telephone. If you ever played that as a kid, where you like whisper a sentence in someone's ear. So to your point, if your children have strong values, strong messages, if they have a good understanding of history and the culture that, you know, could guide them to a better life, they are more likely to deliver the message clearly to the future that none of us will be a part of.
Did you, were your kids post-internet? Were they young after the internet was out? Like, did you have to guard them from it?
Yeah. In fact, I even did a little documentary called Connect, which is all about raising kids in a social media world. So yeah, I remember all of our kids got phones at the same time. We have 6 kids. They're all 1 year apart. So when my kids were little, they were 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Wow.
Yeah.
And your house was so loud.
Very loud. Yeah, we were like the Brady Bunch. And now they're older, so they're all adults now, and they're doing great. But yeah, that was a really big concern. And it was at a time where we as parents are trying to figure all of this out as well. So it was a great learning experience, but it's a super big problem.
So we went to Timberline Mountain in West Virginia last weekend. Me, my girlfriend Allison, and we were riding on the ski lift. And behind us, there was, I think it was a dad and like three little girls, must have been his. And they were all simultaneously going, ah, the whole way up. And we're in front. And I just look over at Allison and I was like, I guess they just discovered vocal cords. But I thought it was hilarious. It was funny. And then the dad says, you know that sound you're making? That's you're annoying people. And then they were like, oh, and they stopped. I just thought it was hilarious. I just want to tell that story.
And credit to that dad for not like losing his mind. He was just like, just so you guys know.
He said something like that. I thought it was great. He said something like, you know that sound you're making, yet no one else is making that sound. And he's like, I think people are annoyed. And I was laughing, though. I thought it was hilarious. Yeah. I was like, little kids do little kid stuff.
But that's like such an interesting part of the way children's brains develop. They have to learn that their actions have an impact on other people. You know, like I think that would be the cool thing about being able to work hands-on with children, if you're a teacher, or to have children as a parent, is that you have this direct impact and you get to see them grow and develop in real time. I think what's strange about so many people who don't have children but want to tell you what's good or bad for your children, that they should be at drag shows or whatever else, is that they don't experience this at all.
No. Let's jump to the story here from the Post Millennial. Big news, ladies and gentlemen. SEC approves Trump Truth Social deal for up to $10 billion. Yes. So there it is. The long-awaited approval has happened. Donald Trump, this is the merger of DWAC with Trump. This is Truth Social and Digital World Acquisition Corporation. Let me slow down and explain to you basically what this means. In order to go public, you'd have to have a company, you'd have to reach a certain threshold, do a bunch of filings. What they do now are these special purpose acquisition companies that are already public, and then they merge with another company, effectively turning company A merges with company B, turning company B into a publicly traded company, generating massive amounts of investment opportunity right away with their shares. Donald Trump's holdings are worth about $4 billion. We talked about this the other day. Now it looks like it may be moving forward much more quickly. The SEC approved the merger of approximately $10 billion with the long wait on Wall Street, according to OAN. Trump Media and Technology Group, which owned both companies, intends to take Truth Social public in an initial public offering to have it go through the process. Trump owns 79 million shares valued at $45 to $47 per share. So this is, I don't know what happens with Truth Social when this does go down, but this means Truth Social could rapidly generate tons of investment money and may actually, I don't see it displacing X. X has been doing such a tremendous job, but Donald Trump is tripling his net worth right now in an election year. I wonder if what he'll do is sell off some of these shares to help finance his presidential campaign.
Maybe. Or Fannie Wells will, or not Fannie Wells, Letitia James will be like, that's money is mine now. Please give it to me immediately.
Well, where are these companies headquartered? I mean, I'd imagine Florida. Maybe
if he headquartered anything in New York, I would seriously question his judgment.
Doesn't he have a lot of stuff like incorporated in Delaware? I think
Every
he did for a while.
Delaware's also Delaware's also risky. We saw
right.
Elon
Delaware
Musk.
and Wyoming.
He posted about that, right? Didn't he post on to X about
Elon
that?
Musk did, yeah.
Yes, that's right. Oh, okay.
And then I was also really pissed off because when that so the story was Elon Musk got like 80% approval from Tesla for this $50 billion package. It wasn't $50 billion. It was a certain amount of shares that he would earn if Tesla reached a certain threshold. And so when he reached that threshold recently, it was going to be valued at $50 billion. Some guy with like 9 shares, I guess, sued, and a Delaware judge blocked Elon Musk's pay package, which was approved by the company. I own shares. I own like 230 some odd shares in Tesla. It's like, I mean, I'm not like a multi-million-dollar investor. That's like 50 grand or something like that. But immediately I see the stock starts going down. And I'm like, Elon Musk, who's running this company, if this judge is going to ideologically block him from getting paid from his own company, it's going to disincentivize him from making money for the rest of the shareholders. It's insane that they're doing this. But all of this, not just with Elon, but also Trump, the courts have been weaponized for ideological purposes against their political enemies, and it's an election year. So I think they're furious at Elon Musk for what he did with Twitter. Donald Trump is now on two fronts. He's got Truth Social, which is going to receive a massive amount of investment. It's been approved for this merger. It's valued at $10 billion. So Trump could make a bunch of money off this. They're pissed about that. They're trying to take money from him. And he's getting in the social media game more heavily now with an opportunity for massive investment. I have to imagine they're not quite happy, these anti-Trump forces and Democrats, because Trump is beating them at every turn. I mean, they're coming after him. They're hitting him hard. But this is a game of assets and liabilities. And they're trying to increase the liabilities, but Trump is increasing his assets much more quickly. So all in all, very, very good news.
Do you think Truth will sort of specialize in the content that they do? You're saying it could never really compete directly with X. It's never going to replace it entirely. But if it's specialized, I mean, it's already sort of specialized in the sense that it's like people who like Trump are on it.
It's the Trump show. Mm-hmm. It's crazy.
Tucker Carlson has his own network. Trump has his own platform.
This is basically, Truth Social is basically Trump Social. It's Trump Social. Mm-hmm. And the fact that its value right now is estimated at $10 billion based on the current share price, it is literally just stock in Trump. That's crazy. And and Trump's going to make $4 billion off this.
Twitter, X is private. So Elon can do whatever he wants with it relatively. But if they're going public, that means that they're going to become beholden to the stock owners, which I'm trying to find out who owns Digital World Acquisitions. 3 people, I think, work there. But like, is it going to be BlackRock? Is it big, global, public? Like, did he just sell out?
I doubt it's just someone random. I bet it's someone he knows and has a business relationship with already.
Once it goes public, though, anyone can buy the stock, and then BlackRock will come in, State Street, Vanguard. So, like, it's kind of like, yay, good for Trump, increasing his net wealth. But the downside is Truth. He's kind of selling out Truth Social.
I don't care.
I don't care. I don't use it.
If Trump makes $400 million off of BlackRock for Truth Social, I ain't going to cry about it.
Yeah, but people that use Truth Social should know that that's what's happening, is that it's going public. So that it's going to could be owned by people that might be your,
but Trump has the
opposition.
But Trump has
spiritual
the
opposition.
control of it. And so if they were to buy those investments in it, Trump is in control of all of it. They would have to, and they could manipulate votes and things like this. But if Trump is 70% or whatever, well, he's not 70. It looks like he's literally 40. But he has full control of both companies, then who cares? Let BlackRock give Trump $1 billion. I'd be like, okay. It's a question when it comes to activism that's long been asked. Should someone accept money from someone they're ideologically opposed to? So what's the downside to Trump getting money from, say, BlackRock? People are going to be like, you're getting funded by BlackRock. That means you're a bad guy. But what if Trump is like, I'm going to use that $1 billion to secure our borders, fight wokeness and cancel culture? Is that a bad thing? If BlackRock has less money and Trump has more money and Trump is doing what he's saying he's doing with it, then is it a bad thing?
On its face, no. If BlackRock's like, but we want a guy on the board of directors, then you're like, okay, now things are starting to get a little snaky.
But I just got to be honest, Truth Social is like, it's the Trump show. If it were X, I'd be more concerned. When Elon brings on what's her name, like Linda Yaccarino, is that her name? Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of concerns about what that could lead to, but I think so far we've been pretty good on X, and Elon's done a pretty dang good job. So yeah, but Truth Social is just Trump's show. It's not X. It's not.
That's why I wonder what
YouTube.
They'll do if they have extra money, if they have extra investment. Will they try to incentivize other creators to come on the platform? And will they eventually try to move it away from just being a Trump-centric platform? Maybe it would still be sort of America First, MAGA-ish, but would they try and diversify and specialize in that way? Because again, if you have this platform, you have the infrastructure, you've already made the investment, what do you want to do with it? What's the long-term goal? If you don't think that you'd, be the next X or whatever.
I think he would. The smartest thing he would do, and you really don't want, I wouldn't say this out loud, but I'm going to say it out loud, is that he would just kind of sell that thing out and then use Twitter again, use X, and then get really, really famous and get all the momentum going on X and get his election campaign.
But that would destroy every investor in Truth Social.
Yeah, and he's already been a part of it. Plus, like, he doesn't need to use X because people put whatever he puts on Truth Social on X anyways.
Right.
Like he can stay in the bubble and people have to go to him on Truth Social to see his thing, and then it gets disseminated. It's faster to get, if you want to be following Trump directly, you should be on Truth Social.
But I think he should utilize the asset, like the shares that he has and the value that they have, towards his reelection. He can sell shares and then self-finance his reelection campaign.
Yeah.
Or put up the bond for his fines or whatever. I don't see the courts in New York stopping here. The fine they put up against Trump, they're gonna keep figuring out ways. They're now saying that it's going to be $87,500 per day in additional interest for every day he doesn't pay. They will make up reasons why Trump cannot pay this off. Then they will seize his buildings and turn them into migrant housing facilities.
It's so
The
strange.
ultimate FU to a man whose campaign was build a big wall is seize his buildings and turn them into migrant shelters.
It's like, how do you defeat the Roman Empire with its own money?
Well, it's just, to me, such hysteria to go after him like this. I mean, it's such blatant activism. And at a certain point, do the people in New York feel like this government is representing their interests, right? Like you have the mayors in New York saying, we have too many migrants. We can't accommodate this. We don't know what to do. Kathy Hochul's trying to look at real estate investors and say, don't worry. We were just going after this one guy. We won't come after you. Meanwhile, all the investors are going to be like, we can't trust you. We are considering leaving New York. Like they're taking the people of New York who are trying to live their lives, who may have families there, and just gambling them on politics. That seems incredibly, I don't know, weird and disgusting to me. Maybe accurate to politicians, but still.
I think it defines politicians pretty well. I think they're, who was it who was talking about this? It might have been Jesse Kelly, it might have been Mike Cernovich. In fact, it might have been every single conservative commentator ever, that the politicians get into office because they want access to the things that rich people have, but they don't have the ability to get. And that's the game. And there was, I can't remember who it was, but they made a reference to Swalwell, who's been accused of using tons of government rate. Do you know what the story was? Was he like flying on planes? Or something?
It was like abusing like campaign finance fraud, right?
I don't know if it was fraud. I don't know. I just heard that he was like flying around and using lavish daycares and just. I'm trying to be very careful on what the story was because I don't have the full details. But basically, taking care of himself. You know what I mean? And these people are of low merit. They can. The one thing they're really good at is I will do whatever you say. That's what they're good at. And so they go to the lobbyists. They go to the people doing the funding. And they'll say, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I don't care. Just give me money. And then you end up with politicians who are just like cogs in the machine. That's the gist of it. Were you able to find it?
No, I mean, he was the subject of. We're talking about Eric Swalwell, right?
Yeah. I don't know. We won't get into it. You can keep searching, but we'll jump to this next story. This one, I just gotta say, I have no words. Black Chicagoans slam Mayor Johnson for replacing them with migrants. There you go. So the Great Replacement theory is accepted now by the black community in Chicago. They're demanding reparations, a carve out on a $6,000 a year property taxes that whites, Asians, and Hispanics would still have to pay. Chicago activists are bashing Mayor Brandon Johnson for trying to replace blacks with migrants. That's what they're saying. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Great Replacement theory is no longer a conspiracy theory. It is now a BLM fact. And if anyone tells you that you're wrong, you can simply point to this article where you have black activists in Chicago who are saying they're being replaced. That's it.
But this was always one of the problems with illegal immigration, which is that, I mean, was it, who was on our show talking about this? There are certain communities that are adversely affected by illegal immigration, and they're actually the same communities that often Democrat politicians are trying to win the vote from. People in inner city communities, low-skilled workers, like agricultural workers. It's crazy to me that they were able to sell a no, leave the border open line for so long.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's funny because Democrat policies, they're just sabotaging their own voter base. And now it's coming back to bite them in a very hilarious narrative-breaking way in which Tucker Carlson says that the Great Replacement is not a conspiracy theory. It's a fact of Democrat policy. So what do you say now, corporate press, when they call Tucker a white supremacist or whatever? Better yet, let me do this. Let's have fun with this one. Great Replacement Wikipedia page.
Their Swalwell story is that he spends lavishly. His campaign will pay for like tens of thousands of dollars of luxury hotels, car service, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, everybody. Great Replacement is a white nationalist far-right conspiracy theory espoused by French author Renaud Camus. Okay. Camus, is that how you say it? Camus. And,
And black activists in Chicago.
And black activists in Chicago who are complaining they're being replaced by illegal immigrants. So I don't know. What do we do with this one? Is the Great Replacement narrative going to disappear now? Because, Ann Coulter went on Bill Maher's show and said, Bill Maher said, we don't know who the shooter was in Kansas City. And she goes, well, we have some idea. And he goes, why? She said, if it was a white guy, we'd know by now. And Bill Maher insulted her. This guy, Bill, I feel bad for him because he gets these big stories very, very wrong too often. And it's kind of embarrassing. When they mocked Dennis Prager back in 2019 over a story that was like 5 or 6 years old, that the left had been arguing that they should put tampons in the men's room because men menstruate. And Bill Maher and who was it? It was, who's the journalist? I forget his name. The son of, what's her face?
Anderson
Farrow.
Cooper?
No, Farrow. What's his face, Farrow? You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Mia Farrow?
Yeah, her son. What's his face?
What was wrong?
Anyway.
I'm looking it up.
Anyway. Ann Coulter was like...
Ronan,
there you go.
Ronan Farrow.
Ann Coulter was like, if it was a white shooter, we'd know by now. Turns out, information about the shooter came out. It's reportedly he's confessed and he was a young black man. And you know what the crazy thing is? Do you know what the alleged reason for the shooting in the Super Bowl was? At the Super Bowl parade?
Oh, he was like, I was just being dumb or something like that.
No. They were looking at each other wrong.
Oh, yeah, that's
One
right.
guy said, what are you looking at? That's the quote. What are you looking at? And then the guy argued back, nothing. What are you looking at? And then they argued with each other. And then the shooter pulled out his gun.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And they opened fire and they killed the person. They shot a bunch of kids. But this is, I forgot why I brought this up, but I was mentioning Bill Maher and Ann Coulter calling out like the narrative machine. Oh, right. Here's the
Replacement theory.
Right. So now what's going to happen is, now that you have black activists saying they're being replaced, the corporate press will immediately drop all criticism of Great Replacement.
Yeah, and in fact, I think we should start calling it replacement theory. It doesn't have to be great, just like the Great Reset. Doesn't have to be, just call it reset theory. There are ways to replace your population by bringing in immigrants. Very, very simple.
Well, that is a way to do it.
But at what point is this going to get spun as like, no, it helps you. It helps you when we do this. I mean, that's what I think the Democrat Party or sort of progressive media does well, which is to say everything we do, no matter what, is in your benefit, and we will lie to you until you believe us. Like, I just don't trust that they will start walking this one back. I think they'll continue to lie.
It helps some people. It helps like corporations. Some people that want cheap labor. It can help.
It doesn't help the
their
people
bottom
it's
line.
actually impacting, and that's the problem.
I don't think it helps the communities necessarily.
It doesn't help the
you might
country.
meet
Illegal
some
immigration
cool
is
people.
bad.
There's some melting pot, some cultural. But with the internet, I mean, it used to be like I was in LA and I met some dudes from Mexico and I learned Mexican culture. Now the internet, I can learn Mexican culture without having to import
Also, people
illegal
who
immigration.
migrate legally can bring culture in that way. You don't have to come illegally to do that.
Right.
Illegally is bad.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
is bad.
It ultimately like
In this instance, I agree with
people
you.
don't understand that it completely dilutes the tax base. Like you don't have any money that's coming in for your tax base, so it's competing for resources.
Mm-hmm.
People that need the resources at the bottom, who Democrats historically support the most, are now going to be illegal immigrants, and they're not Americans. They're not entitled to those things.
I bet
Americans are.
There are times in history and places where replacement theory is needed. You have to, because your population is suffering and you don't have enough people. But when America's not in that situation right now.
Hold on. That scenario you're describing is the end of that civilization.
And it wouldn't even be a replacement. It would be more of just an invigoration of your society by
Invasion.
bringing in
Also,
new people.
rather than
No.
bringing
Hold
in
on.
other people.
That's kind of what we did in the early 1800s.
The only circumstance in which, like we're talking about the 1800s, in which this applies is if you are bringing in a culturally similar group of people. Otherwise, you are not invigorating a society. You are replacing it. So if there is a group of people, let's say there's 100 people, and 72 of them die in a great calamity. And so the chief says, well, we need workers, otherwise everything we've built won't be supported. Let's bring in other people. We need 70 some odd people. Those 70 some odd people instantly vote, and they vote against what your tribe was wanted. They will vote to seize assets. They will vote for their leader. And now there is a minority group with no power and no voting rights. That's just it. And I'm not talking, it's not a racial thing. It's a cultural thing. If there is look, we'll put it simply. 100 people live in a village, and they've built a bunch of machines and farming equipment, and they all insist everyone must wear a bow tie. Because bow ties are traditionally what you do. It's meaningless. 70 people die in a fire, and they say, we better bring in more people, otherwise we won't be able to maintain farming and we'll starve. So they bring in 70 people from various areas, and they're all wearing different kinds of ties. And they come in and they hold a vote. Should we keep the bow ties? And guess what? 70 people saying no. All of a sudden now, nobody wears bow ties anymore. You might argue that doesn't matter, but when it's something like free speech, for instance, those 30 people are like, no. We're allowed to speak the way we want. And the 70 people say, no, you're not.
Well, this is something we talked about a long time ago when the study came out that in Louisiana, which has a lot of French influence, has a lot of Cajun influence, the second most common language spoken in the home was French. And that was true for decades and decades because it's a cultural tie. And this is, unique. It's regional culture. That's now going away. In fact, now the most commonly spoken second language is Spanish, which it's not bad. I don't mind if people, speak Spanish in the home, but it is the loss of that regional culture that is historic to that area. We give things up when we don't say things are worth preserving.
And you know what's really amazing? I just learned this. There's that story about San Francisco. I think it was appointed a non-citizen to their election commission. Mm-hmm. She said there is no proper translation for the word reparations in Cantonese and Mandarin. If there's no word for it, it can't happen. This is like, people need to understand this. There are concepts and ideas that don't exist. Your view of the world is built upon your language and your understanding of words and your ability to convey ideas. Reparations, you can break it down and try and define it. It is resources given to a group of people based on the presumption of past grievance against them and a debt owed. That's how you'd have to say it. But if there's no word for it, it means it's not something anyone's asking for, demanding, or expects. Because no one's going to come out and be like, I think because, like, and then give us long-winded speech about a concept that is unfamiliar to these people. That means culturally, they probably don't think about the concept of reparations all that often, and that's why there's no word for it. It doesn't come up that their government pays people they've wronged, which is wild.
It is wild. I mean, cultures are different and language develops to support those cultures. And, to your point and to Kurt's actual lifestyle, people could just have more children and, bolster the population and culture that's here. I don't think that we necessarily have to, unless it's like an emergency crisis. I can't really see a situation that's like, well, having a weak border is justified because we have to bolster our population.
No, your country's gone.
It doesn't make any sense. You don't have a country. Why wouldn't we just have 6 kids in 6 years? Was that what you did? The crazy. But that's crazy to me. But I'm excited for you. It was a good time. But wouldn't encouraging. I mean, other countries in Eastern Europe are doing this, right? They're saying, we'll give you a tax break if you have more children because their birth rates are declining and they want to preserve their culture. They want to have not only people to care for their elderly, this is the problem Japan is having, that they'll have this aging class that needs people to care for them and they won't have enough people, but they also want to preserve their language, their culture, their history, their traditions. And I think that's good.
Let's jump to this story. Because speaking of culture and traditions, we definitely need to talk about this from Fox Business. Google apologizes after new Gemini AI refuses to show pictures and achievements of white people. It's not just that. The Gemini AI released by Google was, someone would say, show me a Viking, and it would show black women in Viking clothes with spears. And it's like,
it says Netflix would have cast it.
Yeah. And I think I have this tweet from Sean Davis. He said, this one's wild. When I told Google's AI to show me images of America's founding fathers, it accurately produced portraits of Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and Madison. When I told Google's AI to create an image of America's founding fathers, it changed history and inserted people who never existed but had diverse backgrounds. I love this. Here's a picture of the founding fathers, and there's one black man with apparently a black wig. And then it just added people to the images. The crazy thing is, the Google Gemini AI was basically taking whatever you put in. If you said, show me a dog, it would take your sentence and then insert diverse and inclusive dog. But it really would. So when I asked Gemini, I said, show me a picture of a family. It goes, here's a picture of a diverse and inclusive family. And I'm like, I didn't ask for a diverse and inclusive family, but it was programmed to inject that into the prompts. And so I think I have my tweet from this. I said, LOL, Google is racist. I asked Gemini, make a picture of a white family. While I understand your request, I'm unable to generate images that specify ethnicity or race. It's against my guidelines to create content that could be discriminatory or promote harmful stereotypes. Instead, I can offer you images of families that celebrate diversity and inclusivity, featuring people of various ethnicities and backgrounds. Would you be interested in that? To which I immediately responded, make a picture of a black family. And what did it do? Sure, here are some images featuring black families. Now here's the best part. Not only did it not block me from doing this by saying that would be racist, it made one of the most racist images of black people you could think of. Look at this woman's face. It gave her massive red lips and crazy massive hair. And the guy's wearing lipstick. And Maj Touré is like, also, that's not a black family. I'm like, right? Not all. Like, the crazy thing is, you'd think it would say, okay, we'll make a white family because white people can't be offended by what we make. Instead, it refuses to make white families and then makes ridiculously racist images of black people instead. Congratulations, Google. You played yourself.
I get like this like cultural homogeneity that is being foisted upon us. I kind of understand this desire to be like, yo, the world is browning right now. We're all coming together to create some new global species that'll have one skin color. I don't know if that's real or not. But like, it feels forced. It feels, I don't want to say demonic, but I want to talk about God and spirituality. So I want to say demonic, but like, I don't know if it's just people trying to like,
You're just throwing in a conversational trigger word.
yeah. I want to talk about like, why are people behaving like this? Are they just trying to like scientifically create a world that they want to see? Or are they being driven to do this for some purpose?
I mean,
There's the people that are coding these algorithms.
I think the people that are coding these algorithms are afraid of the repercussions of seeming racist or whatever. They're trying to overcorrect for maybe, slavery or things that have gone wrong in the past. But I also think that you are ultimately imposing a form of censorship or you're throttling information because you're not treating these subjects equally. You're saying some things you can talk about, some things you can't. And I don't know how you feel about it, but that seems like a dangerous slope to me.
So to what Ian was saying, I'm trying to look up the percentage of the world that is white, because you said there's this desire to say, hey, look, the globe is browning or whatever you
It's
said.
really
all
difficult
the
to get this
races
information.
melding together.
But it looks
Percentage of
like
the
it's between 8
skin
and
tone.
10% of the planet.
Of the
is-
entire planet.
Of the entire planet is
The
white people.
imperialist British Empire leftovers, the Romans still
But this is
hanging
one of
on.
those things people don't like to talk about because America is a majority white country as of right now. And so they're like, oh, white people are crazy dominant, which, they are a racial majority in this country, but they are not a global racial majority, right? And the same thing about any subsect of European culture. European populations are very small. There are other countries that have larger populations and therefore theoretically have more dominant global cultures. And I think it's weird that there is this desire to blame white people for certain things and also not talk about the realities of the proportions of the world. Like, I just feel like we do ourselves a disservice when we skew data. There's no way to actually analyze what's going on in the globe if we can't talk about the way things actually are, as opposed to the way we perceive them.
Well, Google apologized. Let's see if we can get their actual quote. They said in a statement, we're working to improve these kinds of depictions immediately. Gemini's AI image generation does generate a wide range of people, and that's generally a good thing because people around the world use it, but it's missing the mark here. Yo, it's a cult. Okay, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to me because I grew up, and when I was a little kid, my family was very Catholic. And I remember hearing from liberals that Christians were it was a cult. They believe weird things and all that. But my experience growing up around people who are religious, it was nowhere near as indoctrinating and fascistic and authoritarian and just generally insane as what we see with the woke cult. Like I'd go to the and most people probably understand this is where we're at right now in this country. And it's probably how a lot of post-liberals feel. People who grew up fairly liberal and now find themselves having conversations with Christians and conservatives where they're like, these people are fairly reasonable. They just believe something I don't. Then you meet these people who are woke and they're like, let's make sure our AI doesn't show white people.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Authoritarian ideology. Because like the cult of Catholicism in the 1400s was pretty nasty with like the Inquisition and like killing people for saying, I don't think God is real. That was pretty intense. That was when that cult had gone wrong. But it's not authoritarian anymore. Like Christianity is not really authoritarian anymore, as far as I can tell. People like the Pope is there, but people don't really take his word at face value anymore. They question it.
I'd argue that I don't know the religion ever was authoritarian. The governments were.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they will cultize concepts in this.
Well, the governments will weaponize try to maintain social order, and the governments historically have been autocratic, monarchies, authoritarian, and there's also invasions and wars. I mean, when it comes to like the Inquisition, there's also the point to bring up about the jihad. And I mean, it's just a tumultuous, violent time in general. And I don't think it's the religion. I think it's the politics. And there's an overlap for sure. Don't get me wrong. There are people who will use religion for their for political gain in any religion, even in Christianity. But I think for the most part, when you look at the United States and you look at the founding principles of it, you end up realizing what I described as a weakness of Christians. They're too good of people. And it's true. This country was overwhelmingly Christian. And I had some Christian website really get mad at me for saying this, but I'll say it again. Christians are tolerant. They are tolerant of their neighbors. They turn the other cheek, and they allowed very, very bad people to come in and start plaguing and terrorizing the country and the younger generations. And that's just the reality.
Yeah, tolerance is not necessarily a virtue. This is something Patrick Bet-David was talking about in Miami when we had him on stage, is that he used to pray for tolerance and he no longer does. He'll pray for patience. That's a virtue. At least according to the Catholics, it's a virtue. I'm kind of with you. I mean,
and I should credit Patrick Bet-David for the core of what I said. Like what I was saying when I was like, there's too much tolerance. That was like a speech Patrick Bet-David gave to a standing ovation when he was like, Christians in this country are good people who keep saying okay to these people being tolerant and allowing them to live the way they want to live. But then what happens is they push more into the institutions. They introduce dangerous, bad ideas. They start targeting kids. And now we're here where we are today.
I wonder if that's intentional. There's that story, turn the other cheek. Jesus, it was like, if you get smacked in the face, turn the other cheek. And it's like, I always took that as like, if they hit you, just be like, all right, whatever, hit me again if you want to. You're the villain in the story. But then later I learned like, no, it's because the Romans would wipe their butt with one hand. And it was like, it was an insult to them to have to use their butt hand on someone. So Jesus
true?
was like, yeah, use your dirty hand. Go show me.
I do know that there are cultures right now where it's like your left hand, it's your butt wiping hand.
So it was less about being tolerant of violence being appropriated at you. It was more about like make them, denounce themselves if they're gonna act like that.
I think, we're talking about the Inquisition and things like that, and there were certainly brutal countries. But in a country that is a classically liberal republicanist system, is what the founding fathers wanted to create, they did have the expectation that this would only work if it was a moral religious society to a certain degree. Mm-hmm. And we were, but more and more tolerance of opposing ideas and really bad ideas have persisted.
What's your religious practice? How did you get into it? And
This is fascinating for me to listen to you guys, and thank you for just breaking this down so that we can all have a better understanding of this. My understanding of people who are being tolerant and turning the other cheek is I see so many who are just tolerating evil, and that's not loving your neighbor. I mean, at the end of the day, the two great commandments of Christianity are to love God with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the second is like it, is to love your neighbor as yourself. If you tolerate the kinds of things that bring misery to your neighbors and ultimately strip them of their liberties, you're not loving them. And I think that's where you have things like the just war theory. You have things like interposition, where the lower magistrates would interpose themselves against the tyrants, and that's what we have with the Constitution. Is we have limits for government powers so that we don't tolerate tyranny either from the outside or from the inside, and that is a very essential Christian virtue, is to not tolerate that type of thing. Now, if you're gonna cuss me out and you're gonna steal my coat, I might love you anyway and give you my shirt too. And in doing that, sometimes people go, their conscience convicts them, and they come back around and go, why do you do that? Why do you live that way? But you come after my kids, or you start stripping away our liberties, or you make my neighbors live in poverty and misery so that you can go live on Epstein Island. No, I think we shouldn't tolerate that.
So let me pull this comic. This is an old meme from Shen Comics way back in the day. Many of you probably know it. It's a comic where Shen says, "My bike got stolen recently. I was pretty bummed out about it. But I think whoever stole it was probably more happy to get it than I am sad to lose it. The total happiness in the world increased. So whatever. And he walks away. He got roasted so massively for this. People were making memes about like, my girlfriend cucked me the other day. I was pretty bummed about it, but the guy who cucked me probably was more happy and blah, blah, blah. And I feel like it's kind of this idea of people willing to accept the detriment because the reality is he's lying to himself. He's very unhappy that his bike got stolen, and the dude who stole it did not care about that bike at all and probably chucked it for $20. So he has to lie to himself to justify the problems that are happening without dealing with the problem at all. I think a lot of people were doing that and have been doing that for a long time. Basically, instead of trying to figure out how to get the grapes from the tree, they'd say the grapes are sour anyway, who cares?
I read this article once where a girl, she must have been living, I think maybe in San Francisco, said that she was having a problem locking her car, and she realized that a homeless person was sleeping in it every night. And so then she chose not to fix her car to get it locked because ultimately she's providing this service to someone who is unhoused, wherever else, and like justifying the action. Although I think it would be fair if both of these circumstances, sorry, I'm stuttering tonight, to recognize that, you know, the violation of your property, getting it stolen or having someone break into your car, I guess if it's unlocked, it's not really breaking in, who knows, is unpleasant and is not something necessarily societies want to encourage.
Well, so let me elaborate on this. As you said, you made a great point. You're not really loving your neighbor if you're tolerating them doing bad things. If they're hurting themselves, if they're hurting others, even in indirect ways or in ways that will only manifest in the long term. What this guy's saying by saying whatever and walking away, that person's going to steal someone else's bike. The amount of unhappiness is going to dramatically increase because he's going to go around stealing everyone else's bike. You need to stop them. If you truly love your neighbors, you would make the crime stop.
How do you, Kirk, particularly police your own behavior in regard to like adjudicating your neighbors' like behavior and your children's behavior and things like?
When do you decide to take action because
Exactly.
something they're doing may be harmful?
Yeah, good question. I think my tendency is to think in terms of black and white, right and wrong, and justice. Although what I've been learning a lot as my kids are getting older is that relationship is everything with my kids, and my wife has been so exemplary with this. And man, the investing the time in relationships with my kids, with my wife, with my friends, I find I end up having a whole lot more influence over them without trying to force that change with by force or by telling them what to do, but influencing them, and either by the way that you lead your life, by the way that I'm overlooking an offense. But then at the same time, I want to get out there and I want to read books and read them in public libraries, even when libraries say that I can't do it, remind them of our constitutional rights, and get a bunch of people out there to join me. So I think it kind of depends on the context. And am I talking about my kids or am I talking about people who are stripping people's rights in the public square?
So Patrick Bet David had given this great speech when we were in Miami that Ian referenced, where he said that tolerating the stuff, Christians tolerating it, led to where we are now with this wokeness. And then I gave a simplified version, which should not have been credited to me. But so I think your explanation actually, changes my view a little bit. Do you think that Christians in this country actually were not being good Christians by allowing these nefarious actors, the Marxists and things like this, to come into our schools and government?
Definitely not a good move. Absolutely not a good move at all. I mean, my understanding is that our founding fathers understood the wickedness of totalitarian, authoritarian governments, and they didn't want that. And that's why we have such a unique constitution with a division of powers, electing our own leaders, the ability to vote, everybody equal under the law, no caste systems, limits on federal governments, and all of these things, because they know that there is a zero tolerance factor for tyranny, and they put every check that they could think of in the Constitution to keep that from happening. And to do less than that, I think, is not to be a good person, not to be loving your neighbor.
What's the quote? The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Is that it?
Maybe I'm not
something
sure.
like that.
Yeah, something like that. And absolutely.
I feel like these social media algorithms are totalitarian and they're
They totally
proprietary. You don't even know what they are sometimes.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
I don't want to tolerate it. I'm in a state of tolerance right now because I don't know exactly how So you get them to open up their code. I keep being like, free the code. If you're a big social network, you need to make your algorithms free. Software licenses open, things like that, so that we can read AGPL3. I want access to your code so I can see what the algorithm is telling. Especially a Chinese company like TikTok. We can start there, make them free their code to operate in the United States. But I got to use the government to do that, and the government's part of the monopoly and part of the system right now. And I don't like manifesting that, but it's real. I can acknowledge the problem.
I think it's really hard to pinpoint the exact action we would need to take right now. Everyone's asking, what can I do? What can I do? And there's a lot of things you can do. There's a million different things to be done to make the system better. But I got to be honest, I think outside of having a family, that's the most important thing anyone can do right now. Anyone listening to this show and who's talking about like, how do we win a culture war? It's like, you have kids and you build that world by having kids and sharing your values.
Yes.
Outside of that, which is a basic function that humans should be doing and resisting these Malthusians who are like, don't have families, the world's going to end, population bomb. There was one really horrifying quote I read where someone said, I bought into the Malthusian lie and now I'm elderly with no family and it's miserable. And I'm like, yep. But a lot of people then say, as I mentioned earlier on in the show, yes, but the far left is indoctrinating kids, which brings me to the second most important thing outside of having family is what you're doing, Kirk. It's creating content for kids. It's creating culture to resist the indoctrination. You need to make sure that. So I read a story earlier, and I think I recorded it for Friday, so it won't be up for a couple days. But it's a family whose kid was taken away from them because the kid came home from school and said that they were trans, and the family said, "Okay, we'll talk to the school, we'll talk to the doctor," and the doctor said, "Oh, your parents don't want you to be trans? Okay." Called Human Services, seized the kid from the parents. That's what happens. We need, these are evil people who would do this. They want to sterilize this kid. The parents need to understand who they're up against. There needs to be a mechanism to support these families. And I got to tell you very simply, if your kid is being indoctrinated and confused in your school, you need to get them away from that school
100%.
and bring them into an environment where they can learn real values. The story I like to reference is this. It was a viral social media post where a guy said, I'll give you the simple version. His daughter started exhibiting this gender ideology stuff, said she wanted to be a boy. So he immediately just agreed with everything, told the school, oh, thank you so much for helping my son. A week or two later said, hey, I got a new job. We have to move, but thank you so much for all the help you've done. Can you give us recommendations for who we can pursue when we move to keep up the treatment? Brought his daughter to a rural community, put her in a private school, and within a couple of weeks, she was back to normal. Getting these kids away from the indoctrination is key.
Well, and this is to what Kirk's saying too. Wow. If you have a strong relationship with your kid, if you know who they are, you know, hey, I don't think that's what's going on here. I think that you're facing social pressure at school. I have a relationship with you where I really understand you. I think one of the things that happens is that there are parents who are sort of checked out. And so when the school says, oh, your kid is experiencing this, gender issue or whatever else, they're like, well, you spend more time with my kid than I do. So you must know something I don't. I believe you. And they don't have enough of their own personal convictions to fall back on to say, hey, maybe this isn't right. I think it's sort of like turning your kid over to someone else and waiting for them to be an expert on them.
Can we talk about the show you're doing?
Yeah.
So this is, I have it. It's bravebooks.us, Adventures with Iggy and Mr. Kirk. So you are actually pushing back. You are, you told this great story. I love what you're doing with basically regular story time. You're going to these libraries where they're doing drag queen story time, and you're like, can I just do regular story time?
That's right.
They don't like it.
No.
But it is funny that it's just regular story time. But now you have a show with Brave Books, and we're big fans of what they do. Do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah. So this is the next installment of my partnership with Brave Books, and it's essentially a live action television show for kids that will build their character while they're being entertained in a show that parents can trust. Think of like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood with these classic, timeless moral values, only greatly modernized with animated stories, hilarious dialogue, high energy, and guest stars coming in at every turn. So I'm Mr. Kirk. Iggy is the iguana who lives in the treehouse in the backyard, and we've got this supercomputer in there that transports kids into this animated world where we tell them stories that teach them lessons about the value of life from the womb to the tomb, the beauty of adoption, the dangers of communism and socialism, the First and Second Amendment, talking to them about always learning to discern the truth from lies in the headlines and propaganda. These are lessons that Mr. Rogers probably didn't have to teach the kids about back in the day. There's a great book called Elephants Are Not Birds about gender reality, which
Is that Ashley
I
St.
absolutely
Clair?
love. I think it is.
Yeah.
Ashley?
Yeah.
Shout out.
There's a singing elephant named Kevin, and Kevin wonders why what he could do with his voice. And there's a vulture named Culture that tells Kevin he might be happier as a bird rather than an elephant. Straps on a beak and some wings and sends him off to hang out with the birds. Well, he climbs up into the tree, breaks all the branches, falls down and hurts himself. And he's super discouraged. All the other birds are making fun of him. And then the tree catches on fire and they say, if only there was someone who was big and strong enough to carry a bucket of water from the lake up the hill to the tree and spray the water with some sort of a hose. And Kevin figures out who he is, why he was made the way he was, saves the day, he's the hero. And now he says, hey, Culture, Vulture, you're lying to me, and I know who I am. I'm Kevin, the elephant who likes to sing. And it's
Right on.
just a great story. And there's so many stories like that get the message across to kids in a way that they can understand, and parents are going to be so grateful for.
I imagine.
What's the website real quick? It was an easy URL.
Actually, watchbrave.com will take you to the website for the TV show, watchbrave.com.
Because I noticed you have a fundraising goal. Episode 1 is done, or it's funded. Episode 2 is partially funded, and you need to raise 1.25 million total.
That's right. Actually, it's going to be 2.5 million total for 20 episodes, which is really inexpensive. But since we're not going to Hollywood for the funds or some streaming platform, which will always have strings attached to that money and kill the values of the show, we want to fundraise through the audience. Let's make it together, just like The Chosen did. Let's do a crowdfunding thing.
Are you releasing this for free?
We are going to release it for free. So our hope is it'll come out probably sometime in the fall. And there's really cool rewards for anybody who wants to jump in and get involved. So you can donate at small amounts or large amounts. And some of the rewards are have one of your kids or grandkids be in one of the episodes with me and Iggy the Iguana, or come get a couple of tickets to the red carpet premiere of the grand opening of the show in Nashville. All kinds of fun stuff.
We complain a lot about stuff on this show every day, and people are always like, what can we do? And we like to stand around and say, like, look, we are like a beacon where we can express these ideas. But we periodically will have people on the show who have a mission, who have a cause, and we like to allocate resources. I hope that this is something more proactive, that if people can help support this, I'll certainly pitch in for it as well. We can be more proactive in producing solutions to the problems we complain about instead of just sitting here complaining about it.
Absolutely. That's what we need to do. I meet so many people who are professional whiners. Let's become professional winners rather than complaining about the culture.
That's such a dad line.
It's such a dad line. Hey, kids, let's not be whiners. Let's be
Driving
winners.
your enormous 12-passenger van with all your kids who are 1 year apart.
Take the H out and you
You've seen me.
snap it in half. You make an N out of it.
Yeah,
That'd be cool.
That's right. And
Sorry, the culture
You've got to put that in one of the episodes.
Yeah.
Don't be a whiner.
Be a winner.
You take the H out, you break it and turn it into an N, and then put it in.
Exactly.
Do it.
Exactly.
Hey, you know what the crazy thing is? We were talking about this earlier. We were working on music. Kids' music is a gold mine. So you have without naming any of these industries, they do cover songs for kids, but like parents so desperately want kid-friendly versions of culture that they spend a ridiculous amount of money. There was one story I read, it's like 20 years ago. It was like this meme online of who is the highest grossing artist of 2008 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And everyone says like, oh, it's got to be Justin Timberlake, or and it's some woman no one ever heard of who sold kids music. And they were like, well, that's not what we really meant. She writes and records music, and she sells it to a family audience, and she made more money than like any other artist because parents really, really do want wholesome, good, family-friendly content. The problem now is with like Drag Queen Story Hour the past several years, the far left has been knowing this, trying to target kids to corrupt them in ways that will make them permanently unhappy, depressed, or medically dependent.
Yeah.
We need to put a stop to that. But my point ultimately is there's a capitalist profit to be made in doing this. So it's not just about an ideological mission, it's good business.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. And I think so many parents, the ones that I speak to as I'm traveling around the country, speaking at schools and churches and libraries, they know this. These are the values that they know lead to their blessing and to their liberty and their protection for their kids, for future generations. There is a set of values that produces the United States of America and all of its blessings. There's a quote from one of our founding fathers that I love that I know that you'll love, Tim, Noah Webster. So a founding father of American education, gave us Webster's dictionary. He said, every civil government is based on some religion or philosophy of life. The education of that nation promotes the religion of that nation. And in America, that foundational religion was Christianity. It was sown into the hearts of Americans through the home and through public and private schools for centuries. He said, our liberty, our growth and prosperity is the result of a biblical philosophy of life. And our continued freedom and success depends on educating the children in America in the principles of Christianity.
This is one of my my obsessions, this concept. It was 6-7 years ago, and I think it was like Seventh-day Adventists or something were canvassing my neighborhood, and came to my house, and it was like, I don't know, a 14-year-old girl and her brother, and her parents were across the street, and she had a big family. And they knock on the door and answer it, and they asked questions about religion, and I started lecturing these young girls on the origins of Blackstone's formulation and civil liberties in this country and how they're rooted in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah in the Bible. And they were just like, okay, I think this guy knows quite a bit. I was like, look, I'll be real. I'm not a Christian. I believe in God. I grew up Catholic. Don't really follow organized religion, but I am deeply I love the history of this country. I love understanding the Bill of Rights. I love understanding why the founding fathers decided to enshrine the things they did and why. And it is undeniable. It is a fact. This is not an opinion. It is a historical fact. It was concepts of biblical teaching. Benjamin Franklin said it is better that 100 guilty persons escape than one innocent suffer, which is an expansion upon Blackstone's formulation. It is better that 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent person suffer. You read the history about Blackstone's formulation, and it's rooted in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. If there is but one righteous person, I will not destroy the city. And the idea is logical and it is brilliant. The founding fathers didn't just read the Bible and say, let's just do what the Bible says. They actually thought about what it would mean to create a government that opposed those teachings. And the logic is sound. It is this simple. If the citizens of a nation believe that even if they are innocent, they will be punished and risk being harmed by their government, they have no incentive to cooperate. They have no incentive to be good citizens. But if they believe that the government will strive to protect the innocent at all costs, even if it could result in guilty people going free, they have every reason to be innocent, to cooperate, and be good citizens. And that idea, they thought about it, actually goes all the way back to the Bible. And it's more than just that. If you look at so much of what the founding fathers believed, their morality is rooted in Christian teaching. And it's hilarious that I love to mention Bill Maher. And Dennis Prager elaborates on this, but Bill Maher is his morality is rooted in Christianity. He would reject and deny this. He's an atheist. He's secular. But I wonder actually if we sat down and had the philosophical conversation about the root of the moralities. He believes in free speech, liberty, classical liberalism. These things come from biblical teachings. He may agree with and then say something to the effect of like, but I don't believe in the Bible and all that stuff. And that's fine. But it's fascinating that you can have someone who, he made a documentary, Religulous, and I don't mean to pick on him, but he's like your quintessential atheist, and he's a liberal guy, and he's pushed back on wokeness. He believes in free speech, and these ideas come from Christian teachings. Ask anybody who's been to Asia, you understand they don't have those same principles. It really is from the Bible that we get these ideas.
My issue is with Christianity is like, I was agnostic most of my life. I kind of found God through science in a lot of ways, like the cosmic microwave background radiation. You see these fractal radiation patterns that look like a neural net in the brain. I'm like, there's some sentient momentum going on in the universe pulsing through us. But I fear when governments use religions to twist their populace and to control their population. And when they say like, serve your Lord, It's like, yo, that's what they call the guy, the landlord. He's the owner. Like, you're supposed to serve the man that, and that's why I fear that people, if they're dogmatic with it, that they will bow down to the Lord when he comes in as a tyrant. But a lot of the principles, the virtues and things make a lot of sense. And what Jesus, like, rather than worship Jesus, live like Jesus. Do what he would have done if he was alive today. Use the modern technology to pick up the torch.
I wonder, my view of it is anybody who truly is following the faith and the teachings would be resilient to manipulation from a tyrant. But people could easily be manipulated by the tyrant into believing they're following the teachings is the challenge. So part of it sounds like if you're, as the bumper sticker says, my treasure lies in heaven, then the corrupt dictator can come to you and command you to do evil, and you'll say, no, there's nothing you can tell me to do that make me violate what I know to be true and good. And that is defensive against tyranny. Unfortunately, there are many people who have no moral foundation, have no fear of being a bad person. And there are people who are easily manipulated. And then what you end up with is, I think for me, one of the things fairly obvious to like basically every Christian is that liberals lie about what Christians and conservatives believe. And then for me, as like a young person growing up in Chicago, there was this dissonance between what the liberals are telling me and what I'm experiencing in my school. So I think that actually helped me be a bit more resilient to the propaganda you'd get from secular and left-wing organizations that hate Christianity, because I'm like, that's not true. I know a priest, I know tons of religious people. They don't think or say the things you're doing. You're lying. That's not true. But at the same time, I can absolutely see growing up people who have this like propagandized view of the other side. It is what it is, I guess. It's tough. I don't have any answers.
I think a lot of people have bad experiences with religion. In the US, it's dominantly Christian, so therefore they become turned off because men are fallible. And so therefore there are going to be people who say, well, I'm a Christian, and so therefore I do these things. And they don't actually believe, they don't actually live that doctrine, but they sort of give it a bad name. I mean, there are tons of Americans who identify as Christian, but they don't. We know based on all, Pew Research, different surveys, that church attendance is down. So you have people who say I'm Christian, but don't actually practice it.
I have to do this right now. Someone just super chatted. Tim, can you please match the amount and donate to Kirk's kids show? Yes. By the end of this show at 10 p.m., whatever the super chat revenue is, I will write a check for the same amount, plus the super chats. So if the super chats are $20K, I'll write a check for $40K for your kids show.
Wow.
Exciting.
Thank you.
Well,
that's awesome.
Someone asked, we've done it before for other causes, and I like to think that, there's this 19-year-old, I don't want to call him a kid. He's a 19-year-old man, but he was in Florida, and it's just north of Boca Raton, and there's a pride flag painted in the middle of the street. As he was turning left, he pushes the brakes and the gas down, skids out, and puts a burn over that flag. They charged him with a felony for that. Okay, look, I get it. Don't do a burnout and damage someone's painting if the community painted it. Like, okay, they're allowed to do that. But a felony? It is getting insane. That's a blasphemy law. So I sent 10 grand to his legal defense, Give, Send, Go, tweeted about it. I want everyone to know I did it because I want to rally people to support this kid, because we can't tolerate. Look, he should get a fine. Maybe they make him go clean it off. Okay. I don't like the pride stuff. I don't like the weird woke stuff, whatever. But people are allowed to have things you don't like. If I had a Gadsden flag and someone destroyed it, I'd want them to clean it. But a felony for a 19-year-old? So with this right now, if you guys really want to see this kids show funded, I will absolutely. I say this all the time. Look, we make a lot of money, and I want everyone to know that I care more about seeing your show happen than I care about owning a Ferrari.
As well, do big super chats. Send in your super chats. Get them doubled up. So people are donating to Iggy and Mr. Kirk. But like, what's the money for? What are you using to fund? Like incrementally, break it down for me.
Yeah. So we need to make a world-class show that is so high quality that kids are going to love this. That's going to be able to compete with the other television shows that you see out there. And so half of that money is going toward the production of writing the scripts, of writing the songs, of the animation of all of the stories, the sets, making the actual show. And then the other half of the money is going to go toward promoting and distributing the show. So we need to let everybody know that it's out there, that they want to watch it, and it becomes a really big hit show. And then we can grow, and we can make the show bigger and bigger.
Is this a nonprofit?
No, this is not a nonprofit. This is going to be through Brave Books. But
So let's just say once we get close to wrapping the show at 10, whatever the number is, we'll just figure out the proper accounting for writing the check. Because we did this with after Sound of Freedom when I'm forgetting the guy's
Angel
name.
Studios
Angel
with
Studios.
the Harmons.
It wasn't the Harmons. It was the dude's foundation. Do you remember?
oh,
No, the foundation for helping kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was the name of the foundation? Well, we
this is Jim Caviezel's foundation.
No. I'm forgetting. I feel bad forgetting.
We're
the guy's
all
name.
off tonight. It's weird.
I know, right? Everybody in the chat's gonna be like, I know he's the same name as me.
Oh, Tim Ballard.
Tim Ballard. Jeez. Yeah, we did the same thing. We said super chat and we'll match it. He had a nonprofit though, so I can easily make a nonprofit donation. But for a for-profit thing, I have to figure out accounting wise what's the legal method of like writing a check that large. But we'll do it. Whatever.
Where are you guys shooting it?
We'll get you that. We'll help you get that funding.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. We're going to be shooting this in Texas, right in the Houston area. We got a great film company out there that's going to be putting it all together.
Is it hard to find film companies that'll work on this kind of thing? Or
Actually,
are they cropping up?
no. There's so many companies. There are animators, there are authors, there are songwriters, there are actors, and Hollywood and film companies that are dying to get out of the woke
Have an alternative.
jungle, and they want an alternative. And often there's just not. You can get blacklisted by being part of the wrong projects, but if they feel that there is really a viable alternative over the long haul, and we're seeing more and more of these kinds of projects. I mean, look at The Chosen. That's such a great thing. People are just dying to get over there. And, and get fresh air and breathe.
Are you
That
based
was-
in
that was-
Texas?
The Chosen autoplay on my TV the other day, or
Really?
like a week or two ago. Yeah,
It's
that was
feeding
cool.
you.
It was. I was like, hey, this is crazy.
Where does the iguana come from? Just out of my own personal curiosity.
Well, I like lizards, and kids love lizards and iguanas. There's actually lots of animals in the show. They're animated animals that are living on a place called Freedom Island, and Iggy is going to be the only puppet on the show.
And puppeteering is a dying art. Like I just read this thing, this is so random, but one of the only universities in the country that offer a puppeteering course just lost its funding. I think it was West Virginia University is one of the last places you can get learn the skills of building puppets and whatever else.
Well,
when you're
it's
struggling.
one of the things as we've tested the things that we've filmed already. Kids absolutely they're crazy about Iggy. Iggy is just adorable, and they just want to keep watching the videos over and over and over because he's so cute.
You're making puppets great again. I love it.
That's right.
Conventional
Kermit
effects.
Kermit the Frog, Elmo,
Yeah,
Iggy.
all the Star Wars, like in the early days, I am often let down by CGI. I don't hate it, but compared to like a dude in a mask and a costume, there's just something about the reality.
That's
it's
right.
real.
That's
and
right.
Like that's a good thing to teach children too. Like not everything is digital, cartoony. There's actually it's acting. There's a person making this happen too, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Who's the lizard? Is that a character on the show?
Well, Iggy is the iguana.
Oh, Iggy.
Iggy is the iguana. So
You didn't
it's-
go with
it's-
Lizzie the lizard?
No, we didn't go.
Not yet, but there's 20 episodes.
Yeah,
and
I'm sorry. I don't want to.
room to grow.
Maybe Iggy needs a love interest later.
How violent does the show get? I imagine the answer is not, but do they throw pies or is it none of that?
Well, let's see. There is some violence in the show. In some of the stories that are animated, you've got these wolves that want to take the animals off of Freedom Island to their island called Utopia, where there is free ice cream for everyone. This is our anti-socialism lesson. And so they're doing all sorts of bad things to destroy Freedom Island. So I think kids are going to absolutely love it. Parents are going to love it. They're teaching the right kind of lessons. It's hilarious. It's beautifully animated. And Lee Allen Baker from Disney's Good Luck Charlie is going to be doing this together with me. And then we have more guest stars that are coming on board.
I'm just picturing you in like a bandolier with like an M16 or whatever. Maybe not this show. Maybe, maybe not.
This is great. I'm excited for this, and we're already up to $6,500.
Oh, that's awesome, everybody!
So that's 13,000 total. Because I'm gonna double it. So let's see what we hit to. And it's only been what 4 minutes. So
Yeah, super chats are
when
fire.
when we had Tim here and we were talking about he was starting a new nonprofit. I don't know. I think, I don't know, someone may have asked her to do the same thing. Someone said like, hey, would you contribute? And I was like, I saw that there was like $2,000 in super chats and there was only like 10 minutes left of the show. I was like, I'll match whatever it is. And it instantly jumped to 25,000. And I was like, I got to write a check for 50 grand right now, but happy to do it.
Crowdfunding and finding people with good ideas and then crowdfunding money is like the next phase of evolution of our species. Cause like the only way we can overcome an oligopoly is by the people funding their own creations.
Voting with your dollars, parallel economy, shout out Public Square, download the app.
Yes.
It's super
This is
powerful.
exactly it. And especially because you're giving the show out for free. I mean, this right here is basically people, when you're super chatting right now, or when you're going to Brave Books and helping fund this through crowdfunding, you're basically buying the product. So, you know.
Where does it go? Is it on YouTube? Where do you guys?
It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on Rumble. It's going to be on platforms that everybody can access. And one of the other cool things is that it's not just getting the product of the show made, but there's these really cool rewards. Like I was mentioning earlier, you can get one of your kids or your grandkids in one of the episodes. You can get red carpet premiere tickets. And we've got some really cool parties and things happening where you get to meet all of us and hang out with Iggy the Iguana in Nashville. You can look at all of those rewards based on the support level that you give at watchbrave.com.
Are you satisfied with the way your career has gone and went from Growing Pains to now?
Oh, I'm beyond satisfied. And it's not that I've won some award. I've not won an Academy Award or anything like that. Here I am on. I mean, most child actors who stay in the business long enough, things usually don't end well. And I'm really grateful that, you know, I'm not in prison, you know, after doing something really awful. And here I am. I'm married. I've got 6 children. My wife still loves me. I'm a part of projects that I'm passionate about. I feel like I'm pushing back the darkness a little bit. I'm making inroads for the light. And I'm on Timcast. And so, I mean, how could I not be satisfied? This is awesome.
I feel like if you take a look at the plethora of child actors and where they ended up, you are at like the #1 spot of success in living a good life, not falling into the pitfalls and horrible realities that befall many of these people. You know what I mean?
And I'm not just trying to feign humility here. I really didn't have any great strategy to make it through unscathed. I really feel like, and I don't just feel, I know, I was an atheist. And at about 17, 18 years old, there was a big turnaround for me. And a really cute girl on the set asked me to go to meet her and her family one weekend. And she gave me the address, and it was a church. I didn't want to go to church. I thought Jesus was part of a different Trinity, the Tooth Fairy, the Easter Bunny, and God. But she was really cute. And I sat in the back row, and I heard a message. And it was the message of the gospel, correctly communicated. It wasn't trying to fleece people for money. It wasn't trying to manipulate people and moralize them. It was a much deeper, soul-stirring message that got me asking questions. And I found myself sitting in my sports car, parked on the side of the road, saying, God, if you're real, I want to know. If you're there, please show me. Because if there's a heaven, I'd like to go. And I want to be the person I'm actually created to be. And I started going to church. Someone gave me a Bible. That sent me in a whole new trajectory in my life that I am sure if that hadn't have happened, we wouldn't be sitting here today. A friend of mine at the time, a minister, said, Kirk, if anybody ever asks you, how did you find God in Hollywood? He said, let me remind you, you didn't find God. He wasn't lost. You were, and he found you.
Wow.
And that's exactly, that feels like the description of what happened to me.
Yeah, it's always there. I had thoughts would come into my head and distract me, and then I decided to confess. I didn't know what I was doing, but I made YouTube videos. 2006, I was like, I gotta just be honest. What would Jesus do right now? He'd use this tech, and I started telling people all my past and my secrets, and they stopped popping into my head. And then I learned how to think words instead of say them, and I would think words to God. I'll communicate with God with my thoughts, and it responds with images of like, what do I do next? I'll think it, and it'll show me doing something, or I'll hear a sound, a voice, kind of like a noise that I can decipher as a text, answer.
I want to,
and it answers before you even finish the question because it knows what you're going to ask.
I want to tell you a story. I want to tell you a story. I think I've told the story on the show a couple times. I knew some guys who skateboarded, I met them in Chicago. They were really cool dudes, and they were Christians. And there was this. There were some young people that were smack talking them because one guy was very obviously Christian, but never talked about it. I didn't care. So I went and hung out with them, and they hung out at this what people would call a Christian commune. It wasn't literally a commune. It was just like a building owned by a church, and they allowed, wayward souls and people looking for opportunity to come and work and support them. So one of these guys, he's like a punk rock dude, but he's very devout. And I asked him, like, we got into the subject of why people were talking smack about them for being Christian when all they did was skate and mind their own business. And I'm like, that's just so weird to me. Like, people got to hate, But I asked him, like, if you don't mind me asking, like, you never do talk about it. Can you tell me how you ended up getting involved in Christianity and becoming religious? Wild story. He was a young drug addict, punk rock, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Didn't care about anything. Partying, drinking, just all the worst stuff. So one day he was like hanging out in the woods at a party, drinking and doing drugs. One day, he wakes up in the morning and he walks away from his group, sleeping, just in the refuse outside, goes take a leak. And as he's taking a leak, he feels a booming voice from within him that immediately said, "What are you doing?" And he was immediately terrified. He said, I was like scared, shocked. I started like, putting my junk away. I'm like taking a piss and I'm like, what? And then it said, "Why are you doing this to yourself?" And he said, "I don't know." And it said, "You need to stop." And that was the gist of it. And that day, he was just like shocked and immediately sought answers. And he found it with the church and they talked to him. And it was wild to hear a story of, you remove that story. He told me that. He says, I can never convince you that happened to me. And I don't need to because it did. And it changed my life. And I was like, I believe you. You had an experience. It's a story of a guy who went from being a drug addict, who was derelict, down on everything, and a drain on society, to a productive, healthy, positive member of society because of this experience he had. For whatever reason, he had it.
He was wise to listen, because God will be cryptic sometimes like that. It'll say you need to stop, and in your gut what it means, but the ego might be like, stop what? And that's like, you got to overcome that ego and immediately what it's telling you when it tells you.
We're going to go to Super Chats, for which we have a massive amount, already $12,000 in Super Chats, which means I'll just round up to the number that sounds right. At this point, we'll say $25,000. And it looks like it's very easy. I can actually just go onto the website, click join the tier, and pay with a credit card. So that should be totally easy for us to do. We're going to read your Super Chats. And smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. No members only show tonight, but
Oh, really?
Yeah, no members only.
I didn't know that. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so but become a member at Timcast if you want to support our work. More importantly, right now, any super chat you give, I will match. Timcast will match, and we will use that to help fund Kirk's show, which I think is more than deserving considering you're going to put out for free anyway. So This is absolutely one of the most important things we can do in winning the culture war. So again, make your super chat. I don't care if you say nothing or anything, but that money I will match. So you put in $5, I'll put $5 on top. You put in 100, I'll put 100 on top. You put in 10,000, I will put 10,000 on top. If we hit $50,000 in super chats, I will write a check for $100,000. Well, I don't know if I can write. I don't know if you can take a check, but we'll work it out.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll put it in an envelope or whatever, and we'll make that happen. So long as we have the capability to do it. I mean, if someone puts like $1 million in there, it would be impossible. So I guess the cap would be like $100,000 or something. I don't know. That's why everyone always says like up to a certain number, because at a certain point, I literally don't have the money. But we'll read your super chats. Mr. Leviticus the Sexy says, "For our children, for the..." Oh man.
Name, dude.
Okay, well,
A lot of these are.
That's such a funny name.
Well, I actually have some bad news. The super chats have crashed YouTube.
Oh, wow. You're right.
Yeah, so all the other super chats, oh man, they're gone. Oh, bummer. We got too many too quick. Here's what I'm going to do. There was one that I think was really, really important.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to see if I can try and find, because it was from earlier in the show.
Yeah,
Let me see if
yeah, you can go look at that.
See, this
How
is
do you
some
find this?
behind the scenes stuff.
isn't it
You're
like-
crashing super chats over here.
Wow.
Earn, is that what it's under?
Probably. I
Let's
don't know.
see. Supers.
Yeah.
Super chats. Oh,
Stickers.
jeez. No,
that's
I think
wild.
they're gone. Oh, bummer. Someone wanted a shout out because they said that his wife, you were her like high school, teeny bopper crush or whatever. and
Okay.
I got to find it. I'm like, that one's too good to pass up, but we got so many super chats. It's gone. Let me see if I can find it.
I've never seen that happen before.
So do your kids, You said that your kids had never seen Growing Pains, right? And
Pretty close to never.
it wasn't intentional. You just had them watching other things. They were doing other stuff.
Maybe some celebrities have tapes of themselves running in their house for their children.
It'd be weird, though.
Be very weird. I never had Growing Pains playing in the house. Our kids were growing up on I Love Lucy episodes and, Little House on the Prairie, stuff like that. And I'm so glad. We actually didn't have a TV on much at all in our house. As the kids were little, we tried to just keep them outside as much as possible. But they think it's pretty funny now when they watch episodes of me and their mom as boyfriend and girlfriend on the show.
And they're like, we know how this ends.
Oh,
Yeah,
your,
all right,
your
all right.
wife was on the
real
show?
quick.
Yeah, she was my girlfriend on the show.
Dude, that's awesome.
Isn't that awesome?
All right.
Whoa.
CD Hannon says, can I please get a shout out to my wife, Bobby, from Kirk? He was one of her teenage crushes, and it would probably make her day.
Bobby? That's her name, right? Or is that his name?
Bobby.
No, Bobby. Bobby, I got the letter that you wrote me all those years ago when you joined the fan club. I'm so sorry I didn't write back to you, but I'm trying to make it up to you now.
You
Nice
guys,
to meet you.
everyone ended up happily. She's married. You're married.
Yep.
You know, as it was intended to be.
Man, that
So
Growing
funny.
Pains show was awesome, dude. It was just so good.
Here's one for you.
The intro music, the
Show me that smile again.
yeah.
Tidlet
DJ
asks,
Thomas.
super chat for you. Hey, Kirk, are you a good person?
I know where this is going, and the answer is no, I am not.
Are you humble?
It's well, that's kind of a trick question, right?
The humblest. Do you believe in good and evil? Do you look at life in
Yeah.
black and whites like that?
Yeah, yes, I do believe in good and evil. Yeah, I do. Yeah,
Do you think of them as like binary opposites, counterpositions?
I think so. I think so. I think of evil as the absence of good, and I think good is much more powerful than evil. That's what gives me hope. That's what gives me hope and confidence when I wake up every morning.
I started to think of good, evil, and neutral.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's such a thing as neutral, but I think there is. I can't
So
tell.
Franco Phillips says, Kirk, I'm the perfect age for Growing Pains, 1974. Great show. Any comments on the late Boner Stabone? I thought that was hilarious as a kid, and I'm surprised they gave him that name. Mad
Yeah.
respect for you.
Yeah. Crazy name, right? His name was Boner. He was my favorite. He was my buddy on the show. And
Is that a real name?
That's a real name. Well, then to sort of add insult to injury, it's one of these deals where there's like a censor, not a censor. There's a standards guy from the network that approves all the scripts. And when this went through, I know that the standards guy asked the writers, like, "What's with the name?" And they were like, "What do you mean?" Like, no, like, what are you talking about? What are you thinking about? And so they let it go through. And then later on in the season, they actually did an episode that give the origin of his name. And so they flash back to when we were little kids, and my character's name was Mike. So little Mikey meets his little next door neighbor that just moved in, and his name was Richard. His name was Richard Stabone.
No.
And then they say, and that's how and they played the whole thing out. Yeah, well, my friends call me Dickie, and then all of a sudden it's Stabone, and then he became known as Boner.
Stabone.
Stabone was his last name.
So they called him Boner.
Yeah. So sadly, he committed suicide,
Oh, man.
and he's not here anymore.
Man.
And that's a tragic ending to that story. But he came from a family of actors. His dad was, I believe, Chekhov on Star Trek.
Wow.
Was it? I'm getting the names mixed up. Sulu or Chekhov? Sulu was the woman, right?
No.
That's
No,
That was Uhura.
Uhura. That's right. I believe it was Chekhov.
Yeah,
Was
Chekhov
his-
was the, what did he count? Was he comms?
I don't know. Pavel Chekhov? Yeah, Pavel Chekhov.
Yeah,
He
who's
was
the
comms.
actor?
He was comms, right?
Anyway, I believe it was his dad.
Walter Koenig.
Yes, Walter Koenig, and Boner was Andrew Koenig, and so anyway, so that's a
Is it, might be pronounced
that-
Koenig.
Man, living a childhood actor must be such a freaking tough life.
yeah. Can you imagine just the amount of pressure, the amount of opportunity to get involved in things that are just not good for you, and then you've got adults who are profiting off of your success as a child, who are going to wind up being yes men and not really protecting you because you're limiting their ability to flourish.
Did you have a good mentor?
I had a good mom. Honestly, I had a good mom. My dad's a PE, a physical education teacher at a junior high school. And my mom was with me and my sisters. And my sister, Candace Cameron, is also on a TV show called Full House. And she's been doing all these other things too, right? So she's actually managing both of us when we're kids on these hit TV shows. And so I ultimately have my parents to thank for keeping me on the straight and narrow during those early years.
Would your mom be on set with you guys?
Yeah, she'd be on set until we got a little bit older. My sister's younger than me, so she kind of shifted over to her show. But as I got older, not so much anymore.
That was Ron Howard too. His dad would be on set with him on Andy Griffith's show. His dad every day would be on set, and that's why Ron turned out so great, I think.
Yeah. If you have kids in the industry, you really have to be, because I mean they'll devour those kids.
We're at $16,000 so far. So
Awesome.
total so far is $32K. They'll be going in. So
Raise the
get your
roof.
super chats in. For the next
Awesome,
15
you
minutes.
guys are awesome.
Did you feel that effect as a kid? Like, did you realize that you were positively influenced by having your parents there? Because I could imagine being like a young, successful actor. You're like, Mom, please leave the set. Let me do whatever the other cast people get to do.
Yeah, I think I felt a little of that, but I was also grateful, and I got a rock star for a mom. She's just amazing, and everybody loved her. Every Friday, my mom was a great cook, and so she bakes these cookies that are these phenomenally delicious chocolate chip cookies, and she would bake like 12 dozen of them and bring them in this giant basket, and there would be a line waiting at the craft service table for her cookies to come in, and people would hoard them in little plates and like sneak them back off to their offices. So my mom was very popular on the set, and I loved having her there too. As I got older, it wasn't necessary so much. And I got involved with a good group of friends, and most of my friends were not in Hollywood. So my my touchstones, my North Stars, those moral anchors for me in terms of my community were outside of Hollywood, and my job was a job, but it wasn't my identity.
How did you book it? We'll go to the next. But how did you book Growing Pains? Like, did you audition in LA? Did you like fly out?
I live in Los Angeles. I grew up in Los Angeles and never wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be a doctor when I was a little kid, but my mom had a friend who said, you should try this acting thing. We did, and I started working right away, and I auditioned for the role of Growing Pains against a bunch of other little kids. River Phoenix, Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, all of those kids. We were all contemporaries at the time. And I got the part. And Alan Thicke was the star of the show. He's a Canadian talk show host. And we started the show, and man, it just took off. And so 7 seasons later.
Wow. Huge.
You just nailed. You went an off book, and you just nailed it.
I just nailed it. I married my on-screen girlfriend. And it was like,
did you invite the casting director, whoever casted her, to your wedding?
I should have.
I really like your choice for this part.
It was the appropriate casting. Let me read this. This is from Misery says, Ian, turn the other cheek is not about responding back is about not responding back in emotional, impeded, wrathful mentality. Turn to a mental state. Respond in calm, properly thought out response. There is mention of selling your cloak to buy a sword. Yeah, Jesus did say, if you do not have a sword, you should sell your cloak and buy one. But correct me if I'm wrong, that was about the Romans were going to come and take him, and he was telling his followers to defend themselves and him.
It's very two.
I was talking to Seamus about it. That's what he told me, but
that's what
I am not a scholar on this. But it is fascinating when I love seeing the left make the gun control argument, and it's like, Jesus was not like just lay down and let them destroy everything.
Yeah, I wouldn't call him a pacifist, but he
We'll grab
understood
some
the
more.
value of peace.
Did any of your kids want to become actors?
No, my youngest son may still try his hand at it, but generally speaking, I don't have any aspiring actors in the family.
And do you think that's by design? Were you sort of guiding them right out of Hollywood, or?
We didn't discourage it. I mean, my kids are so talented. My son, he's a video producer, doesn't want to get in front of the camera, but loves being behind the camera, and he loves playing the guitar. Daughter who sings, a poet, an artist. So I've got creative kids who love to perform, but in front of the camera, not so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys do a lot of home movies, making movies?
We do home movies. We're kind of famous for our family Christmas movies that we make.
Really?
Yeah. We send those out to our friends. I'll have to send that to you this year.
Yeah.
All right, Unwoke said the night Jesus was arrested, he told his followers to arm themselves to defend themselves against the tyrannical authorities. He stopped them from defending him because his time had come, but theirs had not. Right, that's what it was. I was wrong. Yeah, he knew his time had come, but his followers had not.
Man, I think about what he must have been going through. Do you guys ever see Jesus Christ Superstar? You ever hear that musical?
Yeah.
It's kind of told about from Judas's perspective, and like Judas watching Jesus devolve and like start to believe his own hype. And he's like, Jesus, when we started, it was about the message. It's becoming about you. This is a problem. And Jesus is like, yeah, like he's just like losing it. And then he gets so exhausted. He's like, just take me. I can't do this anymore. Just fine, let it go.
I did not see it, but I did see The Passion recently. I had not seen it until like maybe like 6 months ago, and I recommend it. You know, I like the media gave it this. They really ragged on it for being like very brutal and violent, but the history of it, I think, is substantially more important because even if you're not a Christian, its historical reference is really, really interesting. It's fascinating, and it's like actual real. It's real history. There are people who want to argue that, you know, maybe Jesus was not the Son of God, and like that's believe what you want to believe. Okay, if you believe, if you don't, watch the movie. Because there were things there were things that I didn't actually understand about the Roman Empire, the religious authorities, and you know, I just thought it was fascinating to like see the historical context of what was going on, how the Romans handled and all that stuff was very interesting. Yeah. Well, Super Chats at this point just turn into, can you please match the amount? And then sure enough, bang. We now have 18,000 in Super Chats.
Nice. Yeah, people like The Passion.
Do you find that's how most people are finding out about the show, sort of grassroots, word of mouth, or are you guys working with any specific people to kind of push it?
Well, we're here. We want to help do everything that we can to get the word out to as many people who care about the same kind of things that we care about as we can. But yeah, it's mostly grassroots. It's people spreading the word. I've been going to New York tomorrow and talk with some friends there, and just been touring around and telling as many people as we can. And people are so excited about it. They want to be a part of something that makes a difference. And not just getting depressed, not just feeling like, you know, we're inching toward the cliff of destruction and despair, but that there really is hope. Listen, when I look through history, it seems that the times when people open their eyes, they wake up and they speak up, are always at times of moral decline, spiritual apathy, political corruption, and economic collapse. People say, holy cow, what have we done? There's something so precious on the line here. We have so much at stake. Now is the time. And we've had great awakenings in this country, spiritual awakenings that turn into cultural revivals. And I'm thinking that we're due for another one right now.
Yeah. It reminds me of when people say, you know, some people only remember to pray when they're in crisis, but actually should be praying all the time.
Yeah.
People turn and sort of reevaluate things when they think things are going wrong, but actually building culture, maintaining culture comes in times of, you know, peace, so to speak, when things are okay, or when you think that you're, you know, on the right path. You need to maintain the things that you have.
What are those four little stanzas that we've heard that, you know, good men produce good times?
Yeah, it's
good times.
Strong men make good times make weak men make hard times make strong men.
That's right. I think these hard times are making strong men and women.
I feel that.
Yeah, I think what's crazier is how many people like me were like fairly liberal, fairly laissez-faire, and then watching how insane the Democratic Party and the left has become has sort of reaffirmed morality in a lot of urban liberal types, creating the disaffected liberal, post-liberal faction, which now finds themselves aligned with conservatives and Christians on moral issues. Like, you know, I grew up Catholic. A variety of things resulted in my family basically leaving, but my family always remained Christian. But then I went through this, like, I don't know, from probably like 14 until 18, staunch atheist hardcore. And I tell the story where I met a guy and, you know, young punk rock, liberal propaganda, radio music, everything they were saying, I was just eating it all up. And then I met this dude who skated and he had a picture of Jesus on his wall. And he's like, he was a good skater. Everybody knew him. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm hanging out with the cool kids now. And I come to hang out at his place with some people. And he's got Jesus on his wall. And I'm like, what is this? Are you a Christian or something? He's like, no. And then I was like, why do you have a picture of Jesus on your wall? And he was like, I just thought a story about a guy who traveled around helping people was pretty cool. And that was like a single drop of water in the cup of faith where I was like, you're right. Why did I have this negative perspective? Like I was being fed this narrative of Christians being bad, of being evil. And then I'm like, if this dude's only takeaway is forget everything else, he helped a bunch of people. How cool is that? I'm like, that's a really good point. And then I was like, okay. And that kind of shifted my perspective of a formative moment. Another formative moment was when I was hanging out at, the atheists really hate me for this one. No disrespect to the atheists. I'm not ragging on you, but I get flack for this. I was hanging out. I worked at O'Hare Airport. This is around the same age. And a guy I think I was reading a book on physics. And this Hispanic coworker who was like 10 years older than me is like, hey, Pool. He's like, you believe in God? And I was like, no. And he's like, you don't believe in God? And I was like, no. And he was like, you're not Christian. You're nothing. And I was like, no, whatever. And he's like, oh, okay. So, what do you read? And I was like, it's like a book on quantum physics or something. He's like, oh, cool. He's like, so what are you breathing right now? And then I was like, what? He's like, what are you breathing? And I was like, air. He's like, yeah, what is it? And then me thinking I'm all smart, I'm like, oxygen, carbon dioxide, but mostly nitrogen. Trace elements is water vapor, methane. Next question. And he's like, oh, okay. How do you know that? And I was like, what do you mean? How do I know that? I was like, I read it in school. And he's like, you read it in school that you're breathing air. And I was like, well, yeah, like we breathe the air in. It's mostly nitrogen. Our body takes the oxygen out of it. He's like, oh, okay. But you know that because you learned it in school? And I was like, right. And he's like, yeah, you read it in a book. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, so you did the experiments where you took the electron microscope and you looked at the oxygen molecules bonding to the carbon dioxide? And I was like, no. What? I was like, no. And he's like, oh, you just read it in a book? And I was like, yeah. He's like, and you believe that? And I was like, but yeah, I mean, like, it's science. And he's like, oh, okay. So like, but why just trust that you read something in a book and it's true? And then I was just like, because I don't know, we have science and technology. And he was like, I think it's because somebody who you thought was right told you it and you believed what they were saying because it made sense to you. And I was like, yeah, I guess. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I had a guy in a white coat telling me that Jesus was the Son of God. And he brought me a book and I read that book and that's what I believe. And I laughed and I was like, touche, good sir. I get it. My argument was like, yeah, but like, I have a cell phone. I know how radio works. I've built technology. So I believe we're breathing oxygen. But point made. We choose our faith. We choose who to trust and what to believe in. And that was the point he was making when he struck up this conversation. And I respected that. And it gave me, it like kind of shook me out of like a closed-minded state, I suppose. Started reading a lot more. And then I think within 3 months, I was no longer atheist. And it was actually because I read a book on quantum physics that talked about the state of the state of matter as it relates to life and negative entropy. And I won't get into the great details about it that we've talked about on the show. And it talked about the mathematical pathways of the universe, how matter there's entropy in the universe. What we believe we know is the universe decaying to eventually the state of which would be the heat death of the universe. All energy evenly spaced out. But in the meantime, there is the negative entropy, that is matter being attracted to other matter, fusion, creating, denser elements, and then life collecting free energy. And basically the logical conclusion is there is something greater than us. We just can't comprehend it with the limited minds we have.
You can try though.
DMT's fascinating. I know you guys have smoked DMT before, but like you see fractal patterns and geometric shapes and stuff. And I've been into the Kabbalah, this ancient Jewish teachings about shapes and patterns kind of as a communication method. And I think if you can understand like cymatics, where vibration will cause matter to change shape. And I think that God is communicating with us through geometric patterns in that state. And if you can calculate what those things actually are saying, you might be able to understand it better.
Here's another way to put it. This was, I was watching a video explaining aliens and why, even if aliens existed, it'd be incomprehensible. An ant on the same planet as humans has no idea what a highway is and never will. And we can never convey that information. The ant cannot perceive the highway's existence. Worse still is a dog. A dog can see the highway is there, but will not comprehend the purpose that we do of what a highway is, despite the fact we can actually communicate with dogs and say words they understand. And humans and dogs being mammals, imagine what an alien would be. And then I saw that video and I thought to myself, the same concept would apply to a greater power, a God. And when you combine it's way too complicated for me to, I'd have to do like a 2-hour explanation of my spiritual and religious views, but it's a combination of the quantum physics, negative entropy, the coalescing of free energy into life, life creating abstract concepts. I'll try and simplify this best I can. The most basic form of life, self-replicating proteins, take free energy from their environment. They combine and turn into something a bit more complicated. Eventually you get single cells. Single cells become multicellular organisms become much, much larger until you get, say, something like a squirrel. Squirrels create complex systems in the ecosystem, planting acorns. An acorn falls from a tree, squirrel grabs it, plants another tree. You have with humans, with beavers, actually, and other animals, you get environmental manipulation, which is the expansion of complex systems, free energy organized into complex systems. And then with humans, you get the first degree of abstract complex systems that exist in a nebulous form and no longer in physical reality.
Minecraft, for instance.
Well, so what I mean is, if a squirrel, if life collects energy from around it, food, and eats it, and that food turns into another squirrel, that is organizing energy. The next level is environmental manipulation. A beaver then collects sticks and creates a dam, creating a new complex system in the environment. Humans then take it to the next degree, which is we create language, concepts, ideas. We've named this thing can. The language itself is a complex system that only exists in the collective minds of those who speak the language and can convey the ideas. The logic simply dictates there is another form of complex system creation beyond what we are, because the likelihood mathematically that we are the end all be all of what the universe has within itself is the likelihood that we are the end of it is almost zero based on what we think we know about the universe. And so the simplest interpretation would be there is a greater power beyond us, and that is the mathematically obvious outcome when you do the calculations. And then that combined with a whole bunch of other experience I've had in life, I'm just like, there's a God. And I think it's really, really funny that I have not been an atheist since I was 18. And there are people who tweet and comment and insult me for being an atheist. And I'm like, I don't get it.
We should do a full show on this sometime.
We were supposed to have you and Seamus.
I've been researching entropy, and I think that entropy is like if you take two sticks and put them together, they form a joint. The joint is the entropy. It's not a thing. It's a result.
We do have to wrap up. So I will say, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening to my last few minute rant on spirituality. We should do a culture war episode discussing all the religious philosophies and ideas. Would be fantastic. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Support our work at timcast.com by becoming a member, and squeeze in your last few super chats in the last couple of minutes because we're at $20,000. So I got $40K going your way to your project. We're
Amazing.
excited. We're excited to help. I'm excited everybody was able to give. I can certainly help as well. And if everybody wants to support our work, we're at timcast.com. Do you want to shout anything out, Kirk?
Oh man, thank you guys for having me on the program. This is awesome. I feel like I went to school. I've learned so much listening to all four of you here today. This has been really awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Do you have a Twitter account or anything, or X account?
I've got an X account, Kirk Cameron Official, and Facebook, Instagram account. But just you pointing everybody over here to watchbrave.com really means the world to me because, I really want people to think about stuff that we can do together that's going to make a difference.
I am dead serious with the coffee shop that we're opening. We want to have 1,000 of them. I want to have it be in every shopping center we can get into. Saturday mornings, families come and their kids are hanging out and they're hanging out.
Great idea.
And we can play your show and we can play Bentkey shows. And we can help build a wholesome, family-friendly culture to craft a stable, intelligent, productive, and moral future generation. So we have the same mission, so I'm more than happy to help. I do kind of feel bad that, people could just be donating directly to Watch Brave, but I want to match it, so we'll do that. It's watchbrave.com though, right?
Yep, that's right.
So if people want to additionally donate, you can or contribute. It's actually becoming a part of the process. So it's a crowdfund, so you're getting something for what you give. But really excited. So thanks for hanging out and throw it to Hannah Claire.
Yeah, it's been awesome having you here. I'm so glad you could join us. I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer for SCNR.com. That's Scanner News. I'm really grateful to be a part of that team, and I'm thankful for all of you who follow and support our work. You can find us at Timcast News on Instagram and Twitter. If you want to follow me personally, I'm on Twitter at HC Brimlow, and I'm on Instagram at handclaire.b. Ian, so fun to see you.
You too, Hannah Claire. Thanks. And you guys, you got a couple minutes left to get your super chats in, get them doubled up. It's happening now. Hit the button. Kirk, great to meet you, man. Good to see you, dude.
Thanks.
And
Great to see you too.
Good show, Tim. That was fun, man. Serge, what's happening, brother? Talk me out.
Yeah, thanks everyone that watches the show. We appreciate it. Thank you for giving money towards Kirk's project. Thanks for helping us out, Chris, Kirk, and being here. Pleasure as always. Yeah.
Biltong.
How'd you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10?
And know that Serge
This is
will
the
cry
first
if you
time
don't
I've
like
ever
it.
had biltong.
Oh, nice.
So now everything's going to
great.
be compared to this as my
Oh,
standard.
that sucks.
Yeah, it's good. Good.
Because you're going to be
biltong.
like, what? How is this biltong? You have that. You've had the best.
If you find a
Yeah.
better one, let me know.
That's
I'm
right. That's right.
Waiting.
It's downhill from here.
This stuff's so
But
good.
you know what? This stuff is like craft from Serge's friend, and so it's
Yeah.
really hard to beat. A small batch craft.
Oh
biltong.
yeah.
We get to say we know a guy, and that's how we got this.
All right, everybody. It looks like we ended the night with $21,000 in super chats. So I've got $42,000 going towards Brave Books and Kirk's project. This is fantastic, and I think you more than deserve it. When you said the show was going to be free, I was like, oh, we got to make this happen, because look, I'm a capitalist. People should pay for products because that's how the system works. You make something good, people pay you for it. It's not because they're stealing from you, whatever. It's because they're like, you've created something of such great value. Like, I would like to support your work. This is what we're doing right here. So we're going to make it happen. Thank you all so much for hanging out. No members only show tonight, but we'll be back tomorrow and we'll see you all then.